Chapter 4260. As he spoke, countless strange fluctuations appeared in the air. Wherever the fluctuations passed, heaven and earth changed. But as for where the changes were, even Xiaohua couldn't tell. Xiaohua's seal on the Jade Archive began to loosen as these fluctuations appeared. Even the green-robed Xiaohua could see faint clones of the Hua-Lu heavenly devil mysteriously dissipating in various parts of the space. Fellow Taoist, Xiaohua cried out. What are you doing? Don't you know the principle of eliminating evil? You're letting the tiger return to the mountain, leaving behind future troubles? Hihi, Xiaohua said with a confident tone. Could it be that fellow Taoist still doesn't understand? Although Shenhua continent is our biggest secret, with the development of Shenhua continent and our Fortune Gates disciples, it is inevitable that they will leave Shenhua continent. Restricting Shenhua continent is the same as restricting our disciples. It is a selfish thought. Instead of hiding it like this, why don't we just let Shenhua continent go? But Xiaohua said anxiously, if that's the case, our secret, won't it not be a secret anymore? And then I ask you, if you have a priceless pearl, where would you hide it? Xiaohua asked. Xiaohua was surprised and asked in confusion, does this have anything to do with Ai's worries? Yes. Xiaohua nodded. Answer Ai's question. Put it in the spatial ring, in the Kunlun mirror, or in Shenhua continent. Xiaohua pondered for a moment before answering. Xiaohua nodded and smiled. Fellow Taoist is right. But does fellow Taoist know the story of passing off fish eyes as pearls? Of course I know. Xiaohua nodded. Usually I read a lot of books. Then fellow Taoist, do you think it's better to hide the pearl in a place and worry about it all day long? Or to throw it into a pile of fish eyes so that others won't know even if they see it? Xiaohua asked rhetorically. Green-robed Xiaohua blinked his eyes and replied, I feel that it's better to keep it for myself. I can't be at ease throwing it among the fish eyes. Jade Archive, Xiaohua said. There are countless spatial interfaces in this world, and each spatial interface has an edge. Breaking through this edge will lead to another spatial interface. Although I don't know what is beyond the edge of Shenhua continent, I still don't know. However, since all of you can freely enter and exit the Shenhua continent based on your senses, the Shenhua continent must be like the other spatial planes and can be entered by others. Therefore, instead of imprisoning the entire Shenhua continent, why don't we throw the entire Shenhua continent into the various spatial realms? Whoever comes, they don't even know that this is a continent that we control. Whoever comes, won't they be at our mercy? I seem to understand. Green-robed Xiaohua nodded. What you mean is that there is no need to deliberately seal off the Shenhua continent. Anyway, the Shenhua continent is the same as the hidden immortal continent. Even if cultivators come in, they will not know that this space belongs to us. That's the reason. Jade Archive, Xiaohua replied. Fellow Taoist, you are really imaginative. Green-robed Xiaohua sighed. And you are really daring to let it go. If it were I definitely wouldn't dare. Sai, do you think I can bear to? Jade Archive, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. The Shenhua continent is already filled with Buddhist sects, and there are frequent occurrences of Buddhist sections. However, if there are Buddhas, what about demons? Without demons, how can Buddhas become Buddhas? Therefore, the entire Shenhua continent has formed a kind of abnormal psychokinesis, and it is this psychokinesis that attracts the heavenly demons. Damn it! Green-robed Xiaohua suddenly understood. No wonder. I knew it. We are only at the peak of the human world. How could we attract the heavenly demons from the heavenly demons, and Hua-La heaven? So the root is here. But even so, you can't let the heavenly demons live, right? Aren't you afraid that the heavenly demons will overturn the heavens, divulging information about us? If it were any other space, I naturally wouldn't be able to do anything. However, in this space, on this Shenhua continent, we can say whatever we want, right? Even the heavenly demons from the unrestrained heaven and Hua-La heaven have to listen to us, right? Jade Archive, Xiaohua replied with a mysterious smile. I understand. Green-robed Xiaohua nodded again, but in the end he still reminded. However, I still have to remind fellow Taoists that heavenly demons are heavenly demons after all. They are far from what we can deal with our current strength. Fellow Taoist, Don't let your guard down. In this world, there is something called a whetstone. With this object, the blade can be sharpened. Jade Archive Xiaohua said meaningfully. Since we want to be strong, to be the sharpest blade in the world, if we don't have a whetstone like the heavenly demons, how can we be sharpened? All right. Green-robed Xiaohua heard this and his heroic spirit soared. He shouted, I will follow fellow Taoist and see how powerful the whetstone forged by the heavenly demons is. No matter how powerful it is, it's still in our hands. Jade Archive Xiaohua chuckled and waved his hand. All the lightning within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers suddenly retracted, condensing all the demonic qi into a demonic pearl. He then said, Demon spirit, hurry up and kill the happiness-melting heavenly devil. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and Demon Spirit Xiaohua both listened to Jade Archive Xiaohua and Green-robed Xiaohua's words. They trembled with fear but also had some expectations. Now that they heard Jade Archive Xiaohua's orders, how could they not know that Jade Archive Xiaohua had a card up his sleeve? Demon Spirit Xiaohua replied loudly and revealed himself, opening his mouth and swallowing the demonic bead into his abdomen. Sigh after Demon Spirit Xiaohua swallowed the demonic bead, Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed again. As the saying goes, man proposes but God disposes. This is exactly the case. After such a long time of planning, in the end, it was just a good idea or an opportunity. Even if fellow Taoist I and fellow Taoist had been vigilant, I'm afraid we still couldn't escape the fate of death. Fellow Taoist, what the hell is going on? Hurry up and tell us. Green-robed Xiaohua was somewhat impatient. How did you know there was a heavenly demon in the Imperial Court of Heaven? Let's go, we'll talk about it when we get out. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua laughed. I'm afraid Buddha Bodhi outside is going to be wronged to death. Since Jade Archive Xiaohua could enter the space, the Soul Cultivator Grand Formation outside naturally had already succeeded. Moreover, Xiaohua's demonic body had already been suppressed by the Soul Cultivator, Buddhist and Confucian cultivators. When Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position, Demon Spirit Xiaohua flew out. In just a moment, the demonic qi around Xiaohua's body had already shrunk back into its body. The devil head and demonic qi brought by the heavenly demon were also swallowed by Demon Spirit Xiaohua. Xiaohua opened his eyes. The first thing he did was to look at Buddha Bodhi, who had transformed into Jiang Luer's appearance. He bowed and saluted. I've wronged Great Master. This is all I's fault. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Buddha Bodhi's face had the same unfathomable benevolence. He put his palms together and replied, It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. This is the knot in our hearts. You get rid of the heart devil, I also get rid of the heart devil. Great kindness. Little monk the green-robed Xiaohua was baffled. He didn't dare to speak bluntly to Xiaohua. He turned his head and asked Buddha Bodhi, What kind of Zen trick are you playing? How come I don't understand? Namo Maitreya Buddha. I can't say it. Unexpectedly, Buddha Bodhi smiled and shook his head, not answering. Hearing this, Xiaohua smiled and said, Great Master, you'd better explain it to them. Otherwise, I'll feel embarrassed. All right. Buddha Bodhi seemed to have already let go of everything. He nodded and explained, Then this poor monk will explain it to you. Fellow Taoist Jade Archive admitted his mistake. He misunderstood this poor monk and thought that this poor monk wanted to snatch Jiang Luer's karmic fruits. Although he had such thoughts because he fell into the heavenly demon's trap, the real reason was that he had such real thoughts. He really didn't want this poor monk to gain merit in the primitive continent and destroy Jiang Luer's future. However, this poor monk only wanted to save the billions of lives in the primitive continent and enlighten those pitiful low-level beasts. I didn't have the intention to snatch anyone's merit. However, no matter how this poor monk explained, fellow Taoist Jade Archive refused to believe me. This is the knot in this poor monk's heart. This knot in this poor monk's heart caused the estrangement between this poor monk and fellow Taoist Jade Archive. This estrangement also became the opportunity for the joyous heavenly demon to attack fellow Taoist Jade Archive. Of course, when fellow Taoist Jade Archive waved his demonic saber to kill this poor monk also understood. Fellow Taoist Jade Archive was the kind of person who was greedy for small gains, but had a righteous heart. When he killed this poor monk, he was actually killing himself. He would rather die than let his juniors and nephews be harmed. This poor monk was actually fellow Taoist Jade Archive himself. And the Jiang Luer he cared about was someone else. In this world, how could there be a reason to go against oneself? Therefore, this poor monk's knot in this poor monk's heart was also untied at that moment. That's not all, Xiaohua said with a smile. Ice Saber not only untied the knot in our hearts, but it also allowed you to gain a blessing in disguise, right? Indeed, Buddha Bodhi admitted. As long as the Buddhists of the Buddhist sect leave the mortal world, they have to cut off their roots in the mortal world. However, this poor monk does not have any roots in the mortal world. My flesh and blood are not complete, so how can I cut it off? And fellow Taoist Jade Archive Saber cut off this poor monk's mortal world. Excellent, excellent. The green-robed Xiaohua could not help but praise. Only with great kindness can there be great returns. However, Master, in your current state, what is the use of cutting it off? The bone-honing Xiaohua looked at the completely different Buddha Bodhi and asked thoughtlessly. Buddha Bodhi laughed and said, "It doesn't matter. This poor monk does not care whether it's useful or not. All this belongs to Jiang Luer. This poor monk has already made a great vow. As long as there's a chance, this poor monk will return everything to Jiang Luer." As he said that, Buddha Bodhi looked at Xiaohua meaningfully and said, "Don't you think so, fellow Taoist?" "Of course." Xiaohua did not evade anymore and said with a smile, "What you think is what I think, and what you do is what I want." Chapter 4261. Fellow Taoist, we already know about Buddha Bodhi, but what's going on with this heavenly demon of joy? This happened too suddenly, and there were no signs at all. I really don't know what's going on. Bonehone Xiaohua was the most outspoken. After understanding the knot between Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi, he immediately asked about the heavenly demon of joy. It's actually very simple. At this moment, Xiaohua looked at everyone and explained, "It's just like what fellow Taoist Soul Cultivator told everyone earlier then." Xiaohua explained the details of the matter to him. In fact, as early as when Xiaohua saw the Buddha statue of Jiang Luer's previous life in the shrine, Xiaohua had doubts about his own Buddhist cultivation, and the target of this suspicion naturally fell on Buddha Bodhi. Even though Buddha Bodhi was explaining, his explanation was actually Xiaohua's self-reflection, and it was not enough to dispel Xiaohua's doubts. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart had already been planted with a demon. The Buddha statue in the shrine had tears in its eyes, and the Buddha statue had been torn apart in its heart. This was not done by Maitreya Buddha, but by the heavenly demon of joy to lure Xiaohua into becoming a demon. At that time, Xiaohua did not have any doubts. Later, when the dragon pattern appeared, the dragon pattern stone giant of the same lineage regarded the stone giant who worshipped Namo Maitreya as an enemy, and this made Xiaohua see two undercurrents in the Eldritch continent. Since there were undercurrents, there was naturally a mastermind behind the scenes. Xiaohua naturally believed that the mastermind behind the scenes was Namo Maitreya, and the god of the dragon race. Of course, Xiaohua already knew that Namo Maitreya had reincarnated, so the mastermind behind the scenes must be the dragon race or the successor of Namo Maitreya. After Xiaohua learned about the imperial palace from Devouring Heaven, he entered the imperial palace to defeat the 5 small eldritch beasts, rescued Dragon Gate Xiaohua and Phoenix Body Xiaohua, and even subdued the Black Jade Qilin. The target of Xiaohua's suspicion fell on the successor of Namo Maitreya. After all, the Imperial Heaven Tower had existed for many years, and according to the Black Jade Qilin, every once in a while, the Imperial Heaven Tower would open up, and weapons and crystals would appear. This kind of miracle would not appear out of thin air. There must be an invisible hand behind it. However, Dragon Vein Xiaohua was a 5-clawed golden dragon. He was injured in Chaotian Tower, yet no dragons appeared. This could only mean that there were no dragons or their descendants in Chaotian Tower, or that there was a dragon that looked down on the 5-clawed golden dragon. Apart from this possibility, it could only be the successor of the Maitreya Buddha. Moreover, this Imperial Heaven Tower was originally the exquisite derivation pagoda that opened the heaven and earth. This further confirmed Xiaohua's conjecture. However, as the Fortune Gate disciples' teaching power expanded, and Xiaohua witnessed the power of the Dragon Clan's faith, A new idea surfaced in his mind. He did not think that the dragon tribe and the Buddhist sect, who were fighting fiercely on the primitive continent, did not fight in the imperial palace. The dragon clan would not allow the Buddhist sect to build the imperial palace of heaven without taking any action. However, other than the imperial heaven tower, there was no other imperial heaven tower in the Fortune Gates territory, which made Xiaohua even more suspicious. When Xiaohua learned from Lu Yi that someone was spying on him, he saw the Buddha statue that was split in two inside the lava giant's body. At that time, Xiaohua suddenly had a feeling that something was wrong. Because the Buddhist sect emphasized on imperceptible influence, even if it was Buddhism, the more simple it was, the higher the level it was. How could the Buddhist sect use bloody tears as a warning? If it was faint tears, then that was the real Buddhist sect's realm. Of course, the stone giant's body was covered in lava, and using lava to make tears would always be red. This was reasonable. But the most unusual thing was that the Buddha statue had cracked. What was even stranger was that the stone giant had only wept bitterly at the beginning, and then later, it did not seem to care. At least, it was not as pious as Xiaohua had imagined. The Buddha statue had always been a symbol of faith, and with the stone giant's faith power, it was impossible for the Buddha statue to crack, even if Buddha Bodhi was teaching the stone giant. Even when the Buddha Lord's Buddha fruit was replaced, the Buddha statue would not crack, and only its appearance would change. Although the Buddha statue cracked, Xiaohua's heart also cracked, but it also made Xiaohua suspicious. Xiaohua suspected that the Buddha statue and the stone giant's faith were two completely different things. When Xiaohua went to another group of stone giants to look at the dragon god statue in the shrine, he had a whimsical idea. He believed that the dragon tribe's descendant and the Buddhist sect's successor did not exist on the primitive continent, and that there was only a third force that borrowed the dragon tribe's and Buddhist sect's power. As for who the third force was, Xiaohua suspected it was the heavenly devil. In truth, there was no special reason or divine ability, but Xiaohua had suffered too much from the heavenly devil recently. Xiaohua felt like a bow cup in a snake's shadow. Since he had a suspect, Xiaohua naturally had to come up with a countermeasure. However, Xiaohua already knew that he might have been possessed by the heavenly devil, and even his other clones might be tainted by the devil qi. If he was not careful, he might be taken advantage of by the heavenly devil. Therefore, Xiaohua could only choose the soul cultivator Xiaohua, who was connected to him in terms of soul, to be his helper. He only told the soul cultivator Xiaohua about his thoughts in the mysterious dark cloud, and told him to hide in the Shenhua continent. He even told him not to tell his other clones, and not to come out of the Shenhua continent, unless it was a critical moment. However, with the appearance of the heaven-devouring beast and Di Ting, Xiaohua felt that his worries were groundless, because all his previous suspicions were perfectly explained by the two beasts. Even the heaven-connecting peak and Chaotian Tower could be attributed to the reckless dragon god. However, Xiaohua was still cautious, and did not let the soul cultivator Xiaohua appear in Chaotian Tower, and the result was exactly what his clones saw. Xiaohua's suspicions were correct. Besides the dragon god and Nanwamethreya, there was indeed a third almighty on the Eldritch continent, and that was the heavenly devil. As for why the dragon god and Nanwamethreya came to the Eldritch continent, and whether the heavenly devil came with them, Xiaohua did not know. Damn it, the bone-honing Xiaohua was dumbfounded when he heard this. His jaw almost dropped to the ground. It's so complicated. I saw all of this with my own eyes, but why didn't I feel anything special? So Xiaohua smiled and said, fellow Taoist bone-honing, and fellow Taoist, you still have a long way to go. If you want to be a real cultivator, you have to be a real person first. Damn it, I am not a person to begin with. Why should I be a person? Dragon Vein Xiaohua used the mountain and river seal to suppress the heaven and earth pagoda in the sky and shouted loudly, but his voice was full of joy. There is no such pagoda in the world without a foundation. Even if the heaven-connecting peak can reach the sky, its foundation is still deeply embedded in the earth. Xiaohua replied with a smile. If you want to become an almighty and move unhindered in the three realms, you have to first lay a good foundation. Humanity, emotions, and experience are all indispensable. This heaven and earth pagoda has no foundation, and Great Master's exquisite derivation pagoda also has no foundation. Green-robed Xiaohua took the opportunity to kick up a fuss. Xiaohua smiled and was about to speak, but his expression suddenly changed, and he said to Xiaohua, "Oh right, fellow Taoist Confucian. When Great Master was attaining enlightenment, the heavenly devil said that this incomplete eldritch continent is in the turbulent flow of time. The Buddhist light of the Buddha realm cannot shine, and the devil nation has no passage to this place. Even the heavenly devil is trapped here. Then, why did fellow Taoists choose Wuxia that day? If I'm not mistaken, Confucian cultivators should have divine abilities that Buddhists don't have. Fellow Taoists, please take care of it. We might not be able to leave this place without fellow Taoists' divine abilities. As Confucian cultivators say, one can't reach 1,000 miles without taking a few steps. If one wants to reach 1,000 miles, one can reach a higher level." The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua nodded. "I've heard some news from the sage of literature, and I've also gained some insights in this regard. After we resolve the calamity in the primitive continent and leave the imperial palace, I'll work with fellow immortal Green Robe and fellow immortal Soul Cultivator to improve the teleportation formation. Of course, since a female immortal from the immortal world left this place, we should have a chance." Good Xiaohua nodded and looked at the 7th floor of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. A mysterious smile hung on the corner of his mouth as he said, "Now that the imperial court's matter has been settled, let's see what it is that requires the Maitreya Buddha Tsili to suppress." While speaking, Xiaohua looked up again. Far away from the Heaven and Earth Pagoda, the heaven-swallowing beast was hiding behind a mountain range with the 9-toothed rake in its hand, looking very nervous. "Hee, this little guy is probably scared out of his wits." Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. A large hand appeared out of thin air and covered the heaven-swallowing beast. The heaven-swallowing beast was very anxious and waved its 9-toothed rake to resist. "Don't be afraid," Xiaohua said. "This old man has already killed the heavenly demon. Now there are only a few of us left in the Imperial Heaven Tower. Besides, if this old man wants to kill you, why would I need to go through so much trouble?" The heaven-swallowing beast was already in awe of Xiaohua. Now that it saw the space being sealed, it naturally had the intention and the ability to break this cage. However, after hearing Xiaohua's words, it gave up on resisting. It only held the 9-toothed rake in its hand, and was taken into the Heaven and Earth Pagoda with unusual vigilance. "Let's go." Xiaohua looked at the heaven-swallowing beast's vigilance and said indifferently, "Although you are related to Di Ting and followed him into the Imperial Heaven Tower, you are also fated to be with this old man. Today, this old man will give you a share of the merit of saving the billions of lives in the primitive continent. This can be considered as living up to your Dharma name of Jieqi." The heaven-swallowing beast was stunned and muttered a few words. However, in the end it didn't say anything. After all, the scene just now was really frightening. The heaven-swallowing beast couldn't let down its guard for a while. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua, Bone-Tempering Xiaohua, Phoenix Body Xiaohua, and Devil Spirit Xiaohua returned. Moreover, Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua still activated the 9 cauldrons to suppress the Heaven and Earth Pagoda, and opened the 7th floor of the pagoda. The pagoda turned into a pure white camellia flower. Chapter 4262. 7 mysterious lights rushed out of the camellia, and the whole space was immediately enveloped by the 7 lights. All the light and shadows dimmed. When Xiaohua's eyes fell on the source of the lights, he saw a Buddhist treasure that looked like 7 bamboo joints and 7 tree branches floating in the camellia. However, no matter what the illusion of the Buddhist treasure was, there were still 7 layers of extremely obscure waves that penetrated into the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Within these 7 layers of waves was an absolute space that no one's gaze or Buddhist consciousness could enter. The Tree of 7 Wonders? Bodhi could not help but cry out in surprise. Why is it here? Is this what Maitreya Buddha's Kylie is suppressing? Master, you're wrong. Xiaohua's divine mind swept over and immediately understood. He smiled and said, "This thing is the same as Penga's axe. It's not the real Tree of 7 Wonders. It's just a shell or a shadow. Like Penga's axe, it's a Buddhist treasure of Maitreya Buddha Lord. Maitreya Buddha Lord's Kylie is placed in the 8th level of the pagoda not to suppress this thing, but to control it. The sixth level of the pagoda under this thing is what the heaven demon of nirvana needs to suppress. Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed. Sure enough, where his hand passed, the tree of seven wonders turned into a shadow. Xiaohua could not hold the Buddhist treasure at all. Master Xiaohua smiled and said, "It seems that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later. The Buddhist treasure will finally fall into your hands." I'm afraid that the multicolored light in the imperial palace that day was emitted by this thing. Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Phoenix Body Xiaohua looked at each other and said almost in unison, "Congratulations, Grandmaster, congratulations. What's there to be happy about?" Bodhi shook his head slightly. "Everything is just a reflection of the moon in the water. Only my Buddha is real." However, Bodhi still chanted Buddhist mantras and came before the tree of seven wonders. He raised his hand and held the Buddhist treasure. Namo Methriya Buddha, Namo Methriya Buddha. The Buddhist chant filled the whole space, and Bodhi easily held the tree of seven wonders in his hand. Haha, fate is too wonderful for words. Xiaohua laughed loudly. He knew very well that the heaven and earth pagoda itself was a unique treasure. It was used by the heavenly demon to support the reversal of space. Inside the heaven and earth pagoda, it was used to suppress the formation I of the innate heavy water flood formation. The heaven and earth pagoda was divided into 9 levels. Panga's axe was on the 9th level, ancient Sili was on the 8th level, and now the tree of seven wonders was on the 7th level. He really could not figure out what better things were in the other levels of the heaven and earth pagoda. After putting away the tree of seven wonders, Buddha Bodhi continued to stand by the side. However, the tree of seven wonders did not leave the heaven and earth pagoda. This was because there were strange waves rushing out from the 6th level of the heaven and earth pagoda, as if the whole pagoda was about to burst. What is this? Xiaohua frowned as he muttered in his heart. I actually have to rely on the wonderful tree of seven treasures to suppress it. I won't release something that I can't control, right? Thinking of this, Xiaohua said to Bodhi, Grandmaster, be careful. If there are any accidents, immediately activate the Buddhist treasure. Bodhi smiled bitterly and said, Don't worry, Tanyu. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely do my best. Bodhi's words naturally revealed his lack of confidence, indicating that he might not be able to control the tree of seven wonders. However, Xiaohua still gritted his teeth and said, Fellow immortal Confucian cultivator, open the 6th level of the pagoda. At worst, we'll destroy this inverted space and overturn the great formation. Fellow Taoist, your thinking is too simple. The green-robed Xiaohua was a formation grandmaster. He curled his lips and said, If we could break the formation like this, would we still need to break it layer by layer? Xiaohua stared at the heaven and earth pagoda with a solemn expression. When Xiaohua opened the 6th layer of the heaven and earth pagoda, the body of the pagoda transformed into the shape of an orchid. Xiaohua and the others were dumbfounded, because there was nothing inside the orchid at all. The previous fluctuations had all disappeared without a trace. Strange. Xiaohua was greatly surprised. After his divine sense swept over, he opened his delirium destruction Dharma eye. However, before he could open it, a bewitching blue color instantly pierced into his Dharma eye, and even a cold and astringent feeling like a gust of wind was born from his Dharma eye. The origin of wind. Xiaohua was really ecstatic. He shouted almost without hesitation, Fellow Taoists, we've struck gold. Quickly prepare. As he spoke, Xiaohua released his divine sense. Within the space, the origin of wood that had yet to be refined immediately spread out. Xiaohua guided his fists into the orchid and slowly displayed the Big Dipper divine fist. Haha, great. Great. This is what I like the most. The bone-honing Xiaohua was the happiest. His figure also landed on top of Xiaohua's head. Wind whooshed out of his fists as he displayed the fist technique together with his body. The Big Dipper divine fist that others couldn't learn no matter what was displayed by the two of them at the same time was truly dazzling. Like the other origins, the origin of wind didn't have any special resistance under the attraction of the starry sky fluctuations. It quickly entered Xiaohua's body, and tempered his body with the flow of the Big Dipper divine fist before finally entering the space. However, it was somewhat different from the other origins. As soon as the origin of wind entered the space, the entire space immediately produced a whistling sound. Then the entire space seemed to be stretched, producing a strange change. "Oh, not good." Xiaohua turned pale with fright. At this time, there were billions of living beings in his space. How could it tolerate the slightest bit of change? Almost without hesitation, Xiaohua's divine sense entered the space. However, when Jade Archive Xiaohua stood firmly in the space, his brows were tightly knitted together again. The entire space was indeed different from before, and it was very different. Everything in front of him was somewhat blurry and distorted. Even the appearance of the Fortune Gate's disciples on the Shenhua mainland seemed somewhat unreal. However, other than this distortion, there were no other obvious changes. Not only were all the living beings growing normally, even the Hua Lishan's heavenly devil avatar that wasn't killed was bewitching some Fortune Gate's disciples who had fallen into the devil path. Everything was no different from before. What is going on? Jade Archive Xiaohua was truly puzzled. Could it be that there are changes in the space that even I don't know about? At this time, the green-robed Xiaohua also came in from outside the space and asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist, why did you rush into the Shenhua mainland without any reason? What the hell happened?" Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled slightly and looked at the green-robed Xiaohua's blurry and distorted figure, asking, "What? Don't you feel that there are some changes in the Shenhua mainland?" "Is that so?" The green-robed Xiaohua looked around in bewilderment and asked curiously, "No? I didn't find anything different." "Is everything exactly the same as before?" Jade Archive Xiaohua asked. "Of course it's exactly the same. I really didn't find anything different." The green-robed Xiaohua looked again, and even moved his hands to attract lightning, carefully comprehending the power of lightning before answering. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked meaningfully at the space and nodded, saying, "Perhaps I was thinking too much. Let's go, let's see what the wind origin is suppressing." "Haha, is there still a need to say?" The green-robed Xiaohua flew out of the space with the Jade Archive Xiaohua as he replied. "Previously, we had been guessing the origin of this innate heavy water. Now that even the origin of wind has appeared, the origin of wind must be suppressing the origin of water. This is the only way to explain how so much innate heavy water came to be." Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position, and his spirit shook. He clapped his hands and said, "Good, I also think so. If we have the water origin, our 5 elemental origins will be complete, and the light escape technique will enter a whole new level." Under everyone's gaze, the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua opened the 5th layer of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Seeing the purple chrysanthemum in the pagoda, Xiaohua scanned it with his divine sense and was overjoyed, because there was nothing in his divine sense. Moreover, there was a kind of heavy fluctuation in the entire chrysanthemum that went straight into the 4th layer of the pagoda. Wasn't this the water origin he was thinking of? However, when he opened his illusion breaker eyes, his eyes were filled with dazzling purple lightning patterns. Xiaohua was absolutely dumbfounded. What? Why is it the lightning origin? Could it be that the water origin is in the 4th layer of the pagoda? Oh, I understand now. At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly had a kind of enlightenment and said in surprise, "Fellow Taoists, do you still remember the white bones we picked up from the dozen or so big pillars under the lava where the stone giant was? Those white bones either had the power to kill with lightning or a fine penetrating power. They were all killed by the lightning origin and wind origin. They were probably killed by the wind and lightning because they wanted to collect these things." Xiaohua was astonished when the lightning origin was revealed. Not only was there lightning vibrating on the pagoda, but the entire space was also shaken, and countless purple colors dyed the surroundings. "Great Master, quickly make a move." Seeing the purple color in the illusion breaker eyes fly up like the rising sun, Xiaohua was startled and hurriedly called out, "Namo Methriya Buddha." Buddha Bodhi chanted Buddha's name, and raised the 7 wonders tree to block it. However, just as he raised his hand, the Buddha's light on the golden body rapidly dimmed. Obviously, he couldn't activate the 7 wonders tree. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and shouted, "Fellow Taoist tempered bones, let's attack together." "Okay." Tempered bones Xiaohua saw the lightning origin and almost somersaulted in midair. Hearing Xiaohua's order, He happily responded and rushed into the sky to activate the Big Dipper Divine Fist. Xiaohua landed below the bone-honing Xiaohua. While releasing the starry sky fluctuations, he also danced with the Big Dipper God Fist. When the thunder origin entered his body, Xiaohua's body immediately felt like it was being smashed by a heavy hammer. His entire body was smashed apart inch by inch, and then fused back together inch by inch. This was even more painful than the first time he introduced the fire origin. Chapter 4263. Xiaohua's days felt like years. He did not dare to faint casually, nor did he dare to let go of any trace of understanding. After all, the power of thunder was the most important of all the spells that he practiced. His understanding of the thunder vanquishing bead was still shallow. In the face of this thunder origin, he could only treat the feeling of not being able to live or die as an experience. However, when the thunder origin fell into the space, Xiaohua's heart clenched again. His mind followed the thunder origin into the space, and an inexplicable premonition was born from the bottom of his heart. Rumble, the thunder origin fell into the starry sky, and the entire space was suffused with purple. At the same time, the green that had not completely disappeared before mixed with the purple. Immediately, there was a change that Jade Archive Xiaohua did not expect. The previously blurred and distorted space was now being stretched by the power of wind and thunder. When the light and shadow stretched to a certain extent, the light and shadow rapidly shrank and returned to its original state in a moment. The power of wind and thunder seemed to have unloaded a heavy burden, and it continued to stretch until the entire space was stretched into another Shenhua continent. However, the Shenhua continent in this space was much smaller than the previous Shenhua continent, and everything inside was somewhat similar to what Jade Archive Xiaohua felt before. Everything inside felt blurry and unreal. What's going on? Jade Archive Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He saw that the space had actually given birth to another space. Waves of strange fluctuations rushed from the space into his mind, and a feeling of being at a loss arose spontaneously. When the strange fluctuations entered his body, Jade Archive Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He hurriedly closed his eyes and sat cross-legged with his palms facing the sky, carefully perceiving the fluctuations. While Xiaohua was comprehending the fluctuations, the changes in the entire space continued to develop. Besides this small space, 6 different spaces appeared around the Shenhua continent. These spaces were somewhat similar to the small space from before, but their sizes were different, and the colors of the spaces within were different as well. So much so that if the Jade Archive Xiaohua opened his eyes, he would be able to see that the outer layers of these 7 spaces were all wrapped in a hazy luster, just like each and every one of the mysterious stars. Finally, a golden light flew up from Shenhua continent and landed on all the spaces. Only then did the shaking of the entire space stop. The entire space fell into a state of absolute stillness. The vibrations that came with the appearance of each space also stopped abruptly. The moment the spatial vibrations stopped, many star-like brilliances appeared in the adjacent spaces. These brilliances were somewhat dim and not particularly vivid. The changes in the space had ended, but the changes in the Shenhua continent had not. Many treasures and rare items had broken free from Xiaohua's shackles. After disappearing in an extremely strange manner, they reappeared in different spaces. There were even many Fortune Gate disciples who had disappeared several times on the spot before slowly returning to their original state. However, this kind of change was caused by the will of heaven and earth. Everything in the space was in a state of stillness. The Fortune Gate disciples were unaware of this, and even Xiaohua, who was meditating with his eyes closed, was unaware of this. As for the strange beasts and rare items that Xiaohua had collected into his space, they had all fallen into the void along with the golden light. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua's eyelids moved and he opened his eyes. The moment his eyelids moved, the stillness of the entire space was broken, and everything began to move again. Xiaohua was no longer on the original Shenhua continent. Instead, he was in a kind of void. He looked at the darkness around him, then at the space where Shenhua continent was, and then at the other spaces that had just appeared. He sighed and said, "Space, ah, space." The so-called space naturally has emptiness first, then space. The 5 elements of heaven and earth are emptiness. and the power of wind and thunder is space. Only spaces with complete origin force can be considered real spaces. As he spoke, Jade Archive Xiaohua gently waved his hand, and countless tiny spaces appeared in the void. With another wave of his hand, these tiny spaces were completely annihilated, and a terrifying destructive force was born from the birth and destruction of these spaces. This is the true power of space. Only by controlling the power of heaven and earth can one have such destructive power. Xiaohua said with a wry smile. What is I's cultivation level now? What's the use of knowing these profound truths of heaven and earth? Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze swept across the various spaces again. He already understood everything inside. Finally, his gaze fell on Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao in the endless void. Previously, in the space where Shenhua continent was, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao had taken shelter in the starry sky. Now, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao had escaped from the starry sky of that space and landed in the endless void. His figure became increasingly ethereal and larger. Similarly, in the void, Xiaohua of the Karma Hand had covered several spaces, and the Karma Hand was incomparably large. Everything will change, and everything will develop. Xiaohua smiled faintly, and his figure landed in the space where Shenhua continent was. He thought to himself, previously, I thought that this was how the space was, but who would have thought that there would be such a change today? Heavenly Tao, oh heavenly Tao, when will it end? Oh. While flying, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao raised his eyebrows, and his figure stopped in mid-air. He looked at a star halo in the distance. The heavenly devil of freedom was actually reborn in that unformed space? Oh my, even the heavenly devil of joy was there? Sure enough, this devil can't be eliminated unless there is no more life in this world. However, the place where the heavenly devil of freedom and the heavenly devil of joy are, is it the devil nation? Why hasn't that place formed yet? I don't care. With these two heavenly devils in I's space, the Fortune Gate's disciples can also pass the devil tribulation. Their cultivation is the real cultivation. I don't believe that the disciples who pass the heavenly devil's test can't be compared to the disciples of the hidden immortal continent, or even the Dawn Rain continent. As Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao was thinking, the green-robed Xiaohua's figure appeared in the space where Shenhua continent was. The moment the green-robed Xiaohua appeared, he looked at the newly formed space in surprise, as if he had already sensed it. Oh, interesting. Seeing this, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao appeared beside the green-robed Xiaohua in a flash. He smiled and asked, why did fellow Taoist come in? Fellow Taoist, the green-robed Xiaohua ignored Xiaohua's question. Instead, he continued to look in the direction of the space and asked curiously, what's going on? I didn't feel anything when I entered the space just now. Why did I find a place that made me feel a strange connection when I came in this time? Oh, what strange connection did you discover with the place outside this space? Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao asked calmly. The green-robed Xiaohua closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then he said word by word, I can't explain this connection. However, I feel that other than this Shenhua continent, there should be another place that I can go. It's like a home. Fellow Taoist, what's going on? Fellow Taoist, if I can say, I will naturally say it. I feel that it's not too late to say it when you discover it. Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao replied mysteriously. The green-robed Xiaohua smiled and said, fellow Taoist, it's up to you to say it. At this moment, the green-robed Xiaohua raised his eyebrows again. With a wave of his hand, Xiaogua appeared beside the two. Xiaogua looked at the two dumbfounded. She didn't understand why two masters suddenly appeared. What's going on? Xiaogua. The green-robed Xiaohua asked. When Xiaogua heard this, she immediately bowed and said while crying, Master, please know that our house has been robbed. Suddenly, a lot of spiritual herbs have been stolen. When the green-robed Xiaohua heard this, he hurriedly looked at the herb field, and then looked at the place he was worried about. Sure enough, his expression changed greatly. He looked at Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao with bright eyes and said, fellow Taoist, is there really a thief? Is it those heavenly demons? Don't worry. Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao smiled and said to the green-robed Xiaohua and Xiaogua, there are some changes in Shenhua continent. This is normal. Everything is under I's control. Master Xiaoguo looked at the green-robed Xiaohua with doubt. And whatever Master says. The green-robed Xiaohua felt very bored and waved his hand. Just do your own thing. Go Xiaoguo. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and patted Xiaoguo's head a few times. You did very well. Master saw everything. Yes, Master. Xiaoguo still couldn't tell which one was the real master. She simply bowed to the two of them and left. Let's go. Fellow Taoists must be waiting anxiously. Xiaohua of the Heavenly Tao waved his hand and called the green-robed Xiaohua out. What's the hurry? We just came in. The green-robed Xiaohua muttered and flew out of the space with Xiaohua of the Heavenly Tao. However, at this moment he stroked his chin and said, Right, there are some changes in the space. When we came in, it was a bit difficult. Did you do something? Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. He had already sensed what the green-robed Xiaohua said. The boundary of the space now was completely different from before. It was the endless void that was in contact with the outside world. It wasn't the original space that was directly in contact with the outside world. Even if a powerful expert discovered his own space, they could only enter the void first before discovering other spaces. Of course, the current Xiaohua couldn't completely understand the connection between the spaces. Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position. The group of doppelgangers looked at Xiaohua and waited for his analysis. They seemed to have seen something from the green-robed Xiaohua's excited face. Xiaohua smiled and said, It's a long story. If fellow Taoists are interested, you can go and see for yourselves after leaving the Imperial Palace. At this point, Xiaohua glanced at the dragon-veined Xiaohua and said thoughtfully, If I guess correctly, fellow Taoist Longmai should be able to enter Shenhua continent this time. Chapter 4264. Oh-ho, Xiaohua of the dragon vein shouted. He raised his head and let out a dragon roar above the heaven and earth pagoda. He seemed very happy. Then, without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, he immediately shouted, Fellow Taoist, this poor Taoist can't wait any longer. Can this poor Taoist go in and take a look? Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the blooming chrysanthemum. He nodded and said, The fourth floor of the heaven and earth pagoda should contain the water source that we urgently need. With the help of wind and lightning sources, it should be able to produce more innate heavy water. If we can obtain the water source, then the Shenhua continent will have all 5 elements. Who knows what changes will happen to the space? Forget it, fellow Taoist Longmai, you can try to enter. Good dragon vein, Xiaohua praised. His figure swayed and rushed into the space, while Xiaohua's mind entered first. Sure enough, as Xiaohua expected this time, Xiaohua entered the space very smoothly. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, Xiaohua didn't enter the Shenhua continent. Instead, he fell into another space above the Shenhua continent. What's going on? Jade Archive. Xiaohua was shocked. His figure flickered and he appeared above the continent. Fellow Taoist, is this the Shenhua continent? Dragon Vein Xiaohua was surprised to see such a barren space filled with rich origin energy. Where did our Fortune Gate's disciples go? Jade Archive. Xiaohua looked at Dragon Vein Xiaohua, and then at the space around him. He already understood that Dragon Vein Xiaohua was formed from the Dragon Cleansing Liquid, which was an item from the Dragon Domain. Therefore, Dragon Vein Xiaohua's body was of a higher grade than ordinary dragons. He might be able to exist in a space like the hidden immortal continent, but he could not enter an incomplete space like the Shenhua continent. Now that Xiaohua's space had merged with the wind and lightning sources, there was a level to it. This space might be a higher grade space that could accommodate Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Similarly, the space that green-robed Xiaohua had sensed on the Shenhua continent was also a higher grade space. Feel it again, Xiaohua suggested. See if you can sense other spaces? Other spaces? Dragon Vein Xiaohua was stunned and said in surprise, Fellow Taoist, how many spaces are there here? Isn't there only one Shenhua continent? Naturally, there wasn't any in the past. But from today onwards, there will be. Xiaohua replied with a smile. Haha, congratulations fellow Taoist. Congratulations fellow Taoist. Dragon Vein Xiaohua immediately understood and cupped his hands with a smile. The Jade Archive. Xiaohua returned the greeting. Congratulations to you, congratulations to you. Then Xiaohua followed Xiaohua's instructions and carefully sensed his surroundings. Before long, he found the aura of the space where Shenhua continent was located. In the past, Xiaohua had been able to sense the Shenhua continent, but he had not been able to enter. Now that he had sensed it and activated his dragon qi, he was actually able to enter. However, it consumed a lot of dragon qi, and the space that came into contact with the Shenhua continent showed signs of collapsing. Because of this, Xiaohua didn't dare to stay for too long. After looking around a bit, he hurriedly left. How was it? The moment the green-robed Xiaohua saw Dragon Vein Xiaohua come out, he immediately asked, Avakania, Avakania. Xiaohua of the dragon bloodline was actually keeping them in suspense. Xiaohua smiled faintly and simply passed on some of his insights into the advancement of space to these clones. It can't be. When the clones sensed what Xiaohua said, they were all stunned. After a moment, they were all beaming with joy. Our luck is actually so good? Previously we shared a space, but now each of our clones has a space? Xiaohua nodded and said, if nothing unexpected happens, it should be so. However, if you want to enter your own space, fellow Taoists, you all need to continue to work hard. Good. We understand. The clones replied in unison. Xiaohua and the other clones calmed down and said to the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua, Scholarly fellow Taoist, you can release the water origin now. Okay. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua responded and activated the heaven and earth pagoda again, releasing the 4th level of the pagoda. After a graceful peony flower bloomed, wisps of green gas flew out from the peony flower and floated towards the surrounding space. A Tai-Wei green light. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua was extremely familiar with this green light and immediately cried out, This is an innate jellyfish. When the clones heard this, they immediately looked towards the peony flower. Sure enough, a ball of water blue-green light was emitting brilliance from within, and endless amounts of Tai-Wei green light fell into the 3rd level of the pagoda. Although an innate jellyfish was also an extremely rare thing in the world, Xiaohua's eyes clearly showed extreme disappointment. Compared to the water origin, the innate jellyfish was still too far away. Granny, I understand now. The green-robed Xiaohua cried out like a prophet. That heavenly demon didn't have the water origin in his hands, so he borrowed the power of wind and thunder to produce something similar to the water origin. Then he used the innate jellyfish to turn this thing similar to the water origin into Tai-Wei green light, and sent it into the Great Formation. At this point, the green-robed Xiaohua stopped because the Grand Light Azure Light was the Grand Light Azure Light, and not the Connate Heavy Water. The Grand Light Azure Light could kill, but it couldn't create a flood like the Connate Heavy Water. The green-robed Xiaohua couldn't guess what was inside the 3rd level of the pagoda that could turn Tai-Wei green light into innate true water. Xiaohua had used his mind to collect the innate jellyfish before, so it wasn't too difficult for him to do so now. However, this innate jellyfish clearly contained too much power of wind and thunder, and too much Tai-Wei green light. It was abnormally heavy, so Xiaohua had to spend a lot of effort to collect it. The green-robed Xiaohua watched Xiaohua collect the innate jellyfish. His eyes turned a few times, and he asked, Fellow Taoist, our 5 elements wishful sky cudgel needs the innate mother of nature. Previously, we used the innate jellyfish and innate fire origin, so which one do we lack now? We still lack the innate mother of nature and the metal and wood elemental magnetism. Xiaohua answered without hesitation. These 2 things are still unknown. Previously, Xian gave us the information about the location of the wood and water elemental magnetism, but we already obtained it in the ruins, so we don't need to go there anymore. And the water origin? The bone-honing Xiaohua reminded again. Without the water origin, fellow Taoists can't cultivate the light escape technique. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, The things we need for cultivation are all rare treasures in the world. Even the immortals of the immortal world would covet them. Fortunately, our luck is not bad, and we were able to wander to the upper realms like the ruins and the Great Desolation continent. Otherwise, who knows when we would be able to gather all these things. As for the things we lack, we don't need to worry. We can slowly look for them. Good. The bone-honing Xiaohua obtained 3 origins at once, but he couldn't refine them in a short time. At this time, He naturally didn't have any objections and was the first to applaud. Fellow Taoist, continue to open it. Xiao Hua instructed the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua. I am already very curious what exactly is inside the third layer, to actually be able to turn the Tai Wei green light into the innate heavy water. Not only was Xiao Hua curious, even the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua was also curious. However, when the third layer of the pagoda turned into a blood-red azalea flower and bloomed, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw the thing inside the azalea flower. Because inside the azalea flower, there was a complete set of golden dragon bones curled up, and an aura that made everyone prostrate themselves in worship overflowed from it. It forced everyone to retreat, and they couldn't even stand steadily in the air. And that almost endless amount of Tai Wei green light fell into the dragon mouth of this golden dragon bones, and flowed out from the tail of the dragon bones. That gu-gu-gu sound of flowing into the second layer of the pagoda was precisely the innate heavy water. Close at first, even Xiao Hua was unable to resist the dragon aura from the dragon bones. He descended from the sky and hurriedly ordered the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua. However, when the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua urged the heaven and earth pagoda to close the azalea flower, he discovered that he was unable to suppress the soaring dragon aura, and thus was unable to close the azalea flower. Damn it, this Hua heaven demon is definitely a genius. At this time, the green-robed Xiao Hua somewhat admired the Hua heaven demon. He was actually able to use the characteristics of these heaven and earth treasures to arrange a great formation, and forcibly create something out of nothing to make the innate heavy water appear. Now that we have slightly damaged it, it can't be restored to its original state. Since the heaven and earth pagoda had already been opened, the dragon aura from the dragon bones above the dragon god became more and more penetrating, gradually forming a dragon shape above the heaven and earth pagoda. And as this dragon shape became more and more plentiful, Xiao Hua and the others became more and more unable to stay for long, as if they would have to kneel before this dragon shape at any time. At this time, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua exclaimed, This seems to be Ao Sheng. What? Ao Sheng? Xiao Hua stared blankly, trying his best to look at that blurry dragon shape, but it was useless. In his eyes, Ao Sheng was no different from Ao Jia and Ao Yi. Only Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's dragon body and Little White's dragon body could be distinguished. Who cares if it's Ao Sheng or not? The golden light above the dragon bones was truly dazzling, and even through this dragon shape, it still pierced Xiao Hua's eyes, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. He angrily said, If fellow Taoist has the means, why don't you hurry up and take this dragon bone? But if I take it, I won't be able to return it to Ao Sheng. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was somewhat hesitant. I can't be compared to Master Bodhi. I can only beat dogs with meat buns bullshit. Xiao Hua angrily said, How can Ao Sheng, this little brat, be compared to Lu Er? Hurry up and take this dragon bone. We won't leave a single hair for Dragon Island. Alright, then I will give it a try. I don't have much confidence. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment, then said to Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua, who was also somewhat numb, Fellow Taoist, help me. Alright. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua nodded, and according to Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's message, he did his best to close the azalea flower a little. When the azalea flower moved, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua also let out a long roar, releasing his dragon body, and landing on the azalea flower in the same position as the dragon god's dragon bone. Then, he inserted the dragon horn on his head into the gap of the azalea flower. Chapter 4265. Weng, the entire dragon horn let out a rumbling sound, and the countless dragon patterns on it fell into the azalea flower along with the dragon horn. The entire azalea flower also shook, and as the dragon patterns overflowed, the entire azalea flower also turned into a dragon shape. Pa in just a moment. There was another burst of explosive sounds, and like bamboo being thrown into a fire pit, many dragon patterns flew out from the cracks of the azalea flower. Fellow Taoist Dragon Vein Xiao Hua suddenly shouted, Lend I 9 drops of essence blood. Ah, 9 drops? Xiao Hua opened his mouth in shock. Don't tell me you want I's life. Fellow Taoist, this is the dragon bone of the dragon god. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's extremely tempting voice came. If you pass this village, you won't have this shop anymore. Today, fellow Taoist is unwilling to part with 9 drops of essence blood, but in the future, even if you have 90 drops of essence blood, you won't be able to find the dragon bone of the dragon god. Okay. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and agreed. When the 9 drops of essence blood fell into the azalea flower, Xiaohua's face turned pale, and he almost couldn't stand in the air. Boom! A huge rumbling sound came from the azalea flower, and the dragon shape in the air turned blood red. Now is the time. Dragon vein Xiaohua roared, his body shrunk, and rushed into the azalea flower. However, in just a moment, the dragon breath that rushed into the sky slowly dissipated and fell into the azalea flower again. Roar! Dragon vein Xiaohua flew out from the azalea flower. His body was covered in golden light, and an uncontrollable dragon might rushed out of his body. Fellow Taoist dragon vein Xiaohua seemed to be unable to control his body, and he shouted, I can't continue to help fellow Taoist here. I want to enter the Shenhua continent to rest. Okay, you can go, Xiaohua said, and released his consciousness to put dragon vein Xiaohua into the space. Once dragon vein Xiaohua left, the entire space immediately returned to its original state, and the clones all let out a long breath. Fellow Taoist, can you control this nation treasure? Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the mountain river seal, and asked Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua. Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua smiled. This nation treasure originally belonged to my Confucian imperial power. Of course I can control it. Needless to say, the heaven and earth pagoda is now under my control. As he spoke, the Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua spat out a mouthful of true qi to stabilize the mountain and river seal. He looked at the innate heavy water that had already disappeared from the 3rd layer of the pagoda and said, taking away the dragon bone is already taking drastic measures. This great array no longer has an endless supply of innate heavy water. The catastrophe of the great desolate continent should have already been resolved. As for the 2nd level of the heaven and earth pagoda, there's no need to guess. It can only be the innate heavy water. Is there even a need to guess? The green-robed Xiaohua snorted and said, anyone with eyes could see the innate heavy water flowing into the 2nd level of the heaven and earth pagoda. Now what we need to guess is, what is being suppressed at the bottom of the heaven and earth pagoda? This the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua thought for a moment and shook his head. I can't guess. Let's take a look first. Xiaohua frowned and instructed. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua opened the 2nd layer of the pagoda. Indeed, after a huge osmanthus flower bloomed, the entire 2nd layer of azure water waves appeared. Looking at the endless azure water waves, Buddha Bodhi mercifully shook his head and said, Namo Maitreya Buddha, if this innate heavy water fell into the great desolate continent, wouldn't it destroy the entire great desolate continent? Keep it. Xiaohua looked around, and saw that there were still many whirlpools appearing from time to time. He understood that the great desolate continent was still raining cats and dogs. He instructed Bodhi, the longer it stays, the more lives will be harmed. Bodhi smiled bitterly and said, this little monk's water bottle is already full of innate heavy water. I can't keep it anymore. This innate heavy water should be kept in the Shenhua continent by Tanyue. No. The green-robed Xiaohua hurriedly shouted. So much innate primordial water, the entire Shenhua continent can't contain it. Could it be that Master wants to flood the Shenhua continent? This Bodhi was also in a difficult position. He looked at Xiaohua and said, Tanyue can seal it in a place, right? Haha, there's no need for you to think too much. Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He thought of the space where dragon vein Xiaohua was at now. That place was merely barren. There was no sea or ocean. Wasn't this innate heavy water exactly what that space needed? As for the harm this innate heavy water would do to the dragon race, dragon vein Xiaohua would definitely not sit by and do nothing. He would definitely refine this innate heavy water into ordinary water. As he spoke, Xiaohua released his consciousness and began to collect the innate heavy water. The green-robed Xiaohua was still worried. He entered the space to check. When he didn't see any water droplets entering the Shenhua continent, he raised his head to look at the sky. He seemed to have thought of something. Taoist, seeing Xiaohua use his divine ability to collect the innate heavy water, Sky-devouring, who was watching from afar, couldn't help but fly closer. It knelt in midair and kowtowed. This little one represents the strange beasts of the great desolate continent, to thank Taoist Jinhun. If this little one has offended you in any way, please forgive me. Get up. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and helped Sky Devouring up. He smiled and said, "Previously, you and I didn't understand each other. The so-called offending has already become a thing of the past." "Yes, Taoist Shenhun." Sky Devouring stood up with Xiaohua's help and respectfully stood at the side. Its attitude was completely different from before. Xiaohua was busy for less than an hour. The amount of innate heavy water in the osmanthus flower didn't seem to have decreased by much. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and raised his head to ask, "Scholarly cultivator, you can already control the heaven and earth pagoda. Can you directly send this innate heavy water to the Shenhua continent?" "This little one has yet to completely control the heaven and earth pagoda," Scholarly cultivator Xiaohua replied. "Moreover, this little one has already tried. There is simply too much innate heavy water. This little one is unable to activate the heaven and earth pagoda. All of you come." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "If I only rely on myself, I don't know when I'll be able to collect it." The green-robed Xiaohua laughed. He waved his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. He said, "We also don't have enough. Why don't we let the Fortune Gate's disciples come out and help?" "Great." Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. "I am used to fighting alone and have always neglected the strength of the Fortune Gate's disciples then." The green-robed Xiaohua handed the Kunlun mirror to Xiaohua. Xiaohua casually glanced at Sky Devouring, who was standing respectfully not far away. He took the Kunlun mirror and activated it, releasing the Fortune Gate's disciples one by one. The strength of the Fortune Gate's disciples couldn't be underestimated. They might not be able to escape the calamity of the desolate continent, but it wasn't a problem to get them to help collect the innate heavy water, especially the Lu family's disciples. When they saw that they could do something for Xiaohua, they all activated the divine ability of the Dragon Clan's descendants and collected the innate heavy water as if they were showing off. After Fujiwen and the others saw Xiaohua, they directed their disciples to various parts of the heaven and earth pagoda to collect the innate heavy water. When they finished distributing, they simply returned to Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua was quite happy to see that his disciples had become useful. However, when he glanced at Fujiwen, he seemed to have thought of something and frowned. He sent a voice transmission to Xiaohua, but Xiaohua merely shrugged and shook his head. Although there were many Fortune Gate's disciples, there was too much innate heavy water in the heaven and earth pagoda. With so many disciples, it took more than a month to collect all the innate heavy water in the heaven and earth pagoda's second floor. Seeing that the innate heavy water was gradually drying up, a magic formation set up in the void appeared at the point where the second and first levels of the heaven and earth pagoda came into contact. This magic formation exuded a kind of dragon's might, and the faint dragon patterns were mixed with some Buddhist light. Xiaohua's divine thoughts revealed a wave that he was familiar with. Wasn't this the firmament formation that Xiaohua had seen on the heaven-connecting peak that day? Few only now did Xiaohua's heart completely calm down. He understood that this great formation was most likely the dragon formation that the dragon god knew about. He might not be able to break it with his strength. However, he had already taken away the innate heavy water. Even if this great formation was not broken, the apocalyptic disaster of the untainted land would become a thing of the past. After the innate heavy water dried up, the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor was revealed. After Xiaohua sent the Fortune Gate's disciples back to the Shenhua continent, he stroked his chin and looked at the heaven and earth pagoda's body. Fellow immortal Xiaohua reminded, the desolate continent's calamity has been eliminated. Now the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor can be opened or not. What is fellow immortal's choice? What if I open it? Xiaohua asked with interest. It's very simple. The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua laughed. There is no such thing as perfection in this world. We have already done everything we could. We have also obtained the treasures we should have obtained. It is actually best for us to stop now. If I am not wrong, the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor should be sealing the heaven and earth pagoda's guardian. This thing could be a heavenly demon or some other demonic creature. If there is another heavenly demon on the desolate continent besides the heavenly demon, then this heavenly demon must be in the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor. If we open this floor, it might be released. If we can't subdue it, then I don't need to say more about the outcome. Xiaohua laughed and replied. In that case, why should we open it? Fellow immortal, you can put away this heaven and earth pagoda, and we will leave the imperial heaven court. What a pity. Xiaohua's face was full of regret as he replied. I have already said that there is nothing perfect in this world. There is a guardian in this heaven and earth pagoda, so I cannot take it away. Therefore, if we want to leave, we will have to abandon this heaven and earth pagoda. Moreover, this heaven and earth pagoda is the eye of the heavenly dome formation. If we don't take it away, this heavenly dome formation will always be there. Even the green-robed Xiaohua's face changed. We can't even leave, right? That's right. There is such a possibility. Xiaohua nodded solemnly. After all, this great formation covers the entire desolate continent. Our teleportation array is also within this great formation. Chapter 4266. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and suddenly turned to ask Sky-Swallowing Beast. Sky-Swallowing Beast, do you think I should open it or not? No. Sky-Swallowing Beast replied without hesitation. Xiaohua asked with a smile. Why? Sky-Swallowing Beast stared blankly and hurriedly explained. Disciple feels that there are so many powerful things in the pagoda. Those that can be used to guard the pagoda must be even more powerful than these things. Now that the disaster of the primitive continent has been resolved, why should we look for trouble? It's just like when this lowly one found a mud-curved beast to eat. I ate its body, but I had to discard the poisonous beast's head in the end. Otherwise, not only would I have to vomit out the body, even my own life would be in danger. You foodie, you only know how to eat. Xiaohua laughed and scolded him. He turned to the green-robed Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi and said, Fellow Taoists, be on guard. If there is anything strange, feel free to attack. Fellow Taoist Confucian Cultivator, prepare to open the last floor. Oh. Okay. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't listen to his advice and wanted to open the last floor, Xiaohua was also helpless and prepared to open the last floor. Wait a moment. At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly spoke again. He looked left and right and flew up, forming a triangle with the green-robed Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi. Finally, he didn't forget to tell Sky-Swallowing Beast behind him. Sky-Swallowing Beast, be careful. If there really is another heavenly demon, I won't be able to protect you. Sky-Swallowing Beast vigorously nodded and asked in a low voice. Taoist, can I not open the last floor? Of course not. Xiaohua replied and raised his hands, holding the seal of turning the sea in his hands. He was very alert. When the green-robed Xiaohua held the Tungjiao shears in his hand, Buddha Bodhi struggled to lift the Tree of Seven Wonders. Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua glanced at Xiaohua and activated the Heaven and Earth Pagoda, opening the last layer of the pagoda. The purple datura flower bloomed strangely, and a gust of ghostly aura mixed with the aura of the netherworld rushed out of the datura flower. Within the ghostly aura, countless ghosts roared and wanted to rush out. Ha ha ha! Xiaohua laughs and proudly says to Buddha Bodhi. Did you see that? This is I's wise decision. Back then, I had seen the souls of strange beasts from the primitive continent flashing in the innate heavy water before disappearing. You all said that you had never seen it before. Look, it's not that you didn't see it before. It's just that it was absorbed into the heavenly demon's heavenly dome formation. Now these ghosts belong to the Master. As long as the Master purifies these ghosts, who would dare to not give the Buddha fruit to the Master? Buddha Bodhi smiled and floated down from the sky. His face flickered from time to time, either Jianglu or Xiaohua. He said mercifully, Namo Mithriya Buddha, Tanuer is right. As long as I obtain so much merit, not to mention the reincarnation of Namo Mithriya Buddha, even the reincarnation of Mahavairakana will not be able to snatch the Buddha fruit from me. Congratulations, Great Master. Congratulations, Great Master. Today, you have finally achieved your goal. The green-robed Xiaohua also cupped his hands and congratulated him. Ha ha ha, congratulations to you. Congratulations to you. Buddha Bodhi laughed heartily. This is the Buddha fruit of my Namo Mithriya Buddha. As long as I'm still alive, I will never let anyone snatch this Buddha fruit. Suddenly, A somewhat timid but abnormally resolute voice rang out from behind Xiao Hua. Immediately after, a heaven and earth pagoda that was several feet tall appeared behind Xiao Hua. As soon as the heaven and earth pagoda appeared, the second layer of the pagoda was immediately controlled by it. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly urged his Dharma power. However, the whole pagoda was imprisoned and his Dharma power could not be urged at all. Not to mention Xiao Hua. Even the green-robed Xiao Hua and Buddha Bodhi were sealed in mid-air and could not move at all. Sky swallowing? Are you crazy? Xiao Hua was on top of the heaven and earth pagoda. Seeing the pagoda that he had mentioned before appear, and that it was actually in Sky Swallowing's hands, he immediately cried out in surprise and tried his best to urge the heaven and earth pagoda. Unfortunately, although the heaven and earth pagoda made a rumbling sound, the second layer of the pagoda did not change at all. Spiritual Master Xiao Sky Swallowing saw that he had the situation under control and did not dare to be negligent. He cried out, "I didn't do it on purpose. This is you who forced me." As he spoke, Sky Swallowing opened his mouth. A golden dragon flew out from his stomach and fell into the heaven and earth pagoda. Dragon crystal? You actually have the dragon crystal of the dragon god? Xiao Hua was shocked. At this point, how could he not know what Sky Swallowing was going to do? But the moment the dragon crystal fell into the heaven and earth pagoda, the whole pagoda immediately made a rumbling sound. Then the pagoda turned into a huge dragon. This dragon was exactly the same as Ao Sheng, but this Ao Sheng's face was ferocious. The dragon horn on his head flashed a cold light. That overwhelming dragon power filled the second layer of the heaven and earth pagoda, firmly covering Xiao Hua, the green-robed Xiao Hua, and Bodhi. Then the dragon-shaped Ao Sheng gave a strange smile. On his face, there was a smile that was similar to the smile of the heavenly demon. He crazily pounced on Xiao Hua's back. Boom! Xiao Hua's back shone with a myriad of light like the rising sun. He wanted to resist the attack of the dragon-shaped pagoda, but this light was instantly annihilated by the dragon horn. Even Xiao Hua's body was crushed like paper under the power of the dragon crystal and the heaven and earth pagoda, turning into thousands of fragments that scattered in the air. With the fall of Xiao Hua, the green-robed Xiao Hua and Bodhi's faces changed greatly. Their bodies shook a few times and turned into flowing light, rushing into the blooming purple datura flower in the heaven and earth pagoda. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed. He was about to escape, but after flying for a moment, he also turned into a ray of light and fell into the datura flower. Alas! Seeing that Xiao Hua had fallen and all his doppelgangers were killed by him, Sky Swallowing's face turned pale. He raised his head to look at the empty second layer of the heaven and earth pagoda. Then he looked at the heaven and earth pagoda that had turned into a dragon. He sighed and knelt down at the place where Xiao Hua had fallen. He kowtowed to the flesh and blood and said, "Spiritual Master, this little one knows that you have done a lot to save the billions of creatures in the Eldritch continent. You are the savior of all the creatures in the Eldritch continent. Moreover, you have been really good to this little one. This little one really likes the weapon you have given to this little one. If you had not uncovered the last layer of the pagoda, this little one would definitely not have made a move. However, since you've decided to unveil the pagoda and fight for merits with Namomethria Buddha, destroying his path of survival, today, for the sake of Namomethria Buddha, I have no choice but to launch a sneak attack on Enlightened Master. This little one will pay for Spiritual Master's life. I will use the weapon Spiritual Master gave to this little one to end my life. I hope that after this little one reincarnates, I can be Spiritual Master's mount to repay Spiritual Master's kindness." As he spoke, Sky Swallowing raised his hand and picked up the nine-toothed rake. He closed his eyes and clenched his teeth, as if he was extremely afraid of pain, and hit himself on the top of his head. However, what was extremely strange was that the nine-toothed rake seemed to be illusory. When it hit Sky Swallowing's head, it simply flashed past. What is going on? Sky Swallowing opened his eyes and looked at the nine-toothed rake in his hand in bewilderment. He then touched his head and asked curiously, "Am I already dead? Didn't I hear that death is very painful?" As he said that, he hugged her a few more times with the back of his hand. "And it seems that you are really dead. If that is the case, then I have not let Spiritual Master Xiao down." Sky Swallowing's pale face showed a trace of relaxation and a smile. Ha ha ha! Suddenly, a kind of laughter rang out in the previously silent heaven and earth pagoda. Sky Swallowing turned pale with fright. He raised his head and saw that not only was Xiaohua's figure facing him in perfect condition, but there was also a trace of a smile on his face. Even the green-robed Xiaohua, Buddha Bodhi, and Confucian cultivator Xiaohua were standing in their original places without any injuries at all. You Sky Swallowing was puzzled. He then realized and said with a smile, "So you have also arrived here a step earlier." Then he knelt in front of Xiaohua and kowtowed. "Spiritual master, don't blame this little one for being ruthless. It is only because this little one has been under Buddha Maitreya since young. He often taught this little one. And this little one is willing to do anything for Buddha Maitreya. The last floor of this heaven and earth pagoda is the last guarantee for Buddha Maitreya's enlightenment. If spiritual master took them away, Buddha Maitreya would really have no way to live, so this little one could only take action." And hearing this, Xiaohua looked at Sky Swallowing with a smile that was not a smile and said, "In that case, this old man has slightly forgiven you. This little one does not care. I beg for spiritual master's forgiveness." Sky Swallowing did not dare to get up and said sincerely, "This little one only hopes to be spiritual master's mount after reincarnation to atone for the sins of my previous life." Xiaohua looked at Sky Swallowing thoughtfully and asked, "Who gave you the dragon crystal that you used to attack this old man? Let this old man see." This little one found that in Chao Tian Imperial Court. Sky Swallowing raised his head and answered honestly, "And that small pagoda? That thing has already been left in Chao Tian Imperial Court. How can this little one take it out?" "You can try. It is said that the dragon crystal of the dragon god can be reincarnated with the soul," Xiaohua said. "Okay." Sky Swallowing opened his mouth. Wung the dragon crystal was spat out from his mouth again. As soon as the dragon crystal entered the air, it immediately emitted a golden brilliance. This brilliance was once again in the shape of Ao Sheng's dragon. This. Seeing the dragon crystal like this, Sky Swallowing's face suddenly revealed a kind of surprise. He was actually not stupid, nor was he stupid. It was just that because he attacked Xiaohua earlier, his conscience was quite guilty. Moreover, when Xiaohua suddenly appeared, he felt a kind of shame that he did not have the face-to-face, so he lost his mind. At this moment, seeing the dragon crystal as dazzling as before, he immediately came to his senses. However, just as he came to his senses, he heard a dragon roar. Then he saw an even more dazzling golden light flash by, and then a soaring dragon breath flashed in front of his eyes. The entire world returned to its calm state, and the dragon crystal in front of him had long disappeared. Chapter 4267. That's not right. Seeing this, heaven-devouring beast immediately jumped up from the ground and exclaimed, This isn't the netherworld." At this time, a voice sounded behind heaven-devouring beast. "Of course this isn't the netherworld. This is just an illusion to test you." Heaven-devouring beast turned around in shock. Soul cultivator Xiaohua was standing there in the distance with an indifferent expression. On his shoulder was a colorful mirage butterfly. Illusion. Heaven-devouring beast's face turned ashen. He opened his mouth again as if wanting to spit out the son of heaven and earth pagoda, but thinking that the dragon crystal was no longer there. How could the pagoda harm Xiaohua? In fact, even if he still had the dragon crystal now, how could he hurt Xiaohua? How did you know?" Heaven-devouring beast's gaze fell on the first layer of the datura flower, and looked at the ghost inside. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. He was really unwilling to accept this, so he asked absent-mindedly. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at heaven-devouring beast. He was secretly happy in his heart. He didn't want to lie to heaven-devouring beast at all. If he really wanted to trick heaven-devouring beast, couldn't he just create an illusion? But he didn't expect that as soon as he appeared, heaven-devouring beast would confess without being pressed. So Xiaohua rolled his eyes and pushed the boat with the current, and made heaven-devouring beast's dragon crystal go away. Of course, Xiaohua didn't care whether this was heaven-devouring beast's cunning trick or not, because when heaven-devouring beast used the nine-toothed rake to hit his head, Xiaohua had already made a decision in his heart. Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's actually very simple. Heaven-devouring beast doesn't have any magical powers, he only relies on bewitching others. Who hung the Pangu axe on heaven-connecting peak? Who placed the Chao Tiang's weapon and crystal? Who placed the Buddha and dragon statues worshipped by the stone giants and other prehistoric beasts on the primitive continent? All signs point to the fact that heaven-devouring beast is only the mastermind behind the scenes. He has a spokesperson in front of the stage. Who is this person?" The heaven-devouring beast and Di-Ting were not suitable because they were much stronger. Moreover, they were extremely loyal to Lord Dragon God and Mithriya Buddha. While a heavenly demon could not make use of them. Of course, it wasn't that the heavenly fiend didn't have the ability to do so. However, from what the heaven-devouring beast and truth listener said and did, they didn't know of the heavenly fiend's existence. In fact, they were key to the heavenly fiend's other plans. Previously, I also suspected that it was the primordial 5 little ones. After all, they are stronger than you. Furthermore, they are more arrogant and easily controlled. However, when I get the Imperial Heaven Tower and you're the only one here, do I still need to suspect anyone else? Moreover, fellow immortal Confucian Cultivator said clearly that this heaven and earth pagoda is a mother-child pagoda. Now that we've reached the bottom, we still haven't seen the child pagoda. How could I not know that the magic tool you used to attack me was the child pagoda? However, I never expected you to have the dragon crystal of the dragon god. Damn it! Why didn't I find out earlier that you had a dragon crystal? Otherwise, why would there be so many changes? At this point, Xiaohua asked curiously, "That's right, sky-devouring beast. How did you end up hanging the Pangu axe on the Tongtian Peak? At that time, didn't you know what the Tongtian Peak was for? When the Tongtian Peak collapsed, the flood fell from the sky. What were you thinking?" Sky-devouring beast hesitated for a moment before answering. The Pangu axe was placed on the Heaven and Earth Child Pagoda. However, at that time I didn't know that it was placed on the Tongtian Peak, but inside the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Therefore, I never knew that there was a Tongtian Peak on the primordial continent. At that time, when I saw the Pangu axe on the Tongtian Peak, I was also dumbfounded. When the Tongtian Peak collapsed and the flood fell, I didn't think too much about it. I didn't know if the flood would be able to kill all the living things in the primordial continent. Only when Taoist master mentioned it did I understand. How did the treasure inside the Heaven and Earth Pagoda get placed? Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua asked. "This is not something that I can know," Sky-devouring beast said in a low voice. "When I came here, I only knew that there were 2 identical pagodas." Afterwards, the sky-devouring heavenly demon told them everything it knew. Xiaohua and the others roughly understood that besides the sky-devouring heavenly demon, there were many other exotic beasts in the Elysium continent. Of course, before the sky-devouring heavenly demon, the sky-devouring heavenly demon had done the same. However, this time, it was unknown whether it was Paradise Devil's luck or misfortune, but he finally realized all his plans. Unfortunately, he met Xiaohua again. After sky-devouring beast finished speaking, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and said, "Give me the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda." Yes. Sky-devouring beast didn't dare to be negligent. It opened its mouth and spat out the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua raised his hand, and immediately took the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda in his hand. Next, 9 Province Cauldron spat out Aoran Chi into the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda, cleansing it. He looked up at Xiaohua and said, "Good fellow immortal, this Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda doesn't have an avatar of Paradise Devil." Then Xiaohua said coldly, "What is Paradise Devil's plan? How could he give himself away in such a small matter? If there is no accident." Then, Xiaohua pointed at Sky-devouring beast and said, "This foodie also doesn't have an avatar of Paradise Devil." Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua didn't feel reassured. He also used Aoran Chi on Sky-devouring beast. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua behind Sky-devouring beast smiled and said, "The best way to control a person is to subtly influence their faith and make them believe that everything they do is true. Using an avatar to control their mind is a bad idea. Paradise Devil wouldn't do such a thing." Sure enough, Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua didn't find anything strange about Sky-devouring beast. Sky-devouring beast, you haven't answered what this old man asked you earlier. Xiaohua stared at Sky-devouring beast and asked, when you knew that what you did could destroy the Great Desolation continent and kill billions of creatures, did you regret it? Speaking of regret, it's not like this little one didn't. Sky-devouring beast replied. However, this little one only regretted it for a moment. After all, it was for the survival of Maitreya Buddha. This little one doesn't regret anything. This little one is willing to do anything for Maitreya Buddha. Another extremely ignorant idiot. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua scolded without pity. Actually, Xiaohua said word by word. Long before you made your move, this old man had already warned you. However, you turned a deaf ear and actually still wanted to make your move. If this old man didn't see the opportunity early, I'm afraid that this old man would really be like these billions of ghosts, struggling bitterly here without being able to escape. Yes, this little one thinks about it now. At that time, Taoist master did indeed warn me. Sky-devouring beast smiled bitterly and said. However, at that time, this little one was wholeheartedly thinking about Maitreya Buddha and didn't care. Fellow Taoists, what do you think? Xiaohua looked up at his clones with a smile that wasn't a smile. However, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and the others all smiled but didn't say anything. Only bone-tempering Xiaohua said at the top of his voice, since fellow Taoist has already made a decision, why do you still need us to say anything? Alas! Xiaohua sighed, looked at Sky-devouring beast and said, this old man has already given you many chances, but in the end, you still chose to attack this old man. Logically speaking, this old man should also take your life. Yes, this little one knows at this time, Sky-devouring beast's life was already in Xiaohua's hands. How could he dare to say anything? However, after you sneak attacked this old man, you immediately chose to kill yourself. This really surprised this old man. Therefore, this old man is a little embarrassed to deal with you. Xiaohua changed the topic and said again, after all, you didn't hurt this old man at all. If I killed you, it would seem that this old man is narrow-minded. Moreover, you attacked for the sake of Maitreya Buddha's survival. This old man admires this belief. However, if I didn't attack you, I would punish you, right? This old man is somewhat unwilling in his heart. Tell me, how should this old man deal with you? This little one attacked Enlightened Master and deserves 10,000 deaths. Everything is up to Enlightened Master to deal with. Sky-devouring beast had long heard that Xiaohua would not take his life. At this time, how could he not know how to take advantage of the situation to get off the donkey? He hurriedly answered respectfully. How about this? Xiaohua said. You already said previously that you're willing to do anything for Maitreya Buddha. Is this true? Of course. Sky-devouring beast nodded vigorously. This little one would rather offend all the living beings in the primeval continent than be willing to let Maitreya Buddha's Buddhist light suffer any harm. Good then. Do you still remember what this old man said to the heaven-devouring beast previously? Namal Maitreya Buddha has actually already reincarnated. Xiaohua had just opened his mouth to speak when he was immediately interrupted by Sky-devouring beast. He said in surprise, this. How is this possible? Maitreya Buddha is already a Buddha Lord. How can he possibly reincarnate? This little one thought that you were deceiving the heaven-devouring beast previously. Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Sky-devouring beast, saying, do you think this old man is someone who deceives people? No. Sky-devouring beast hurriedly changed his words. Then what does Taoist master mean? You're helping the evildoer, helping the Huala heavenly devil destroy the world. You've already been tainted with boundless karma. Now, you no longer have the face to stay in the primeval continent. Rather than being beaten to death by the primeval continent's 5 little ones in the future, why don't you leave with this old man? Xiaohua said his plan. This old man will bring you to see your family's Maitreya Buddha Lord. You can stay by his side to protect him. Firstly, it's to atone for your sins. Secondly, it's also this old man's punishment for you. How is this possible? Sky-devouring beast said anxiously. Even if Maitreya Buddha Lord reincarnated, his magic power is still boundless. How is this possible? Buddha Bodhi smiled and interrupted Sky-devouring beast, saying, if that Maitreya Buddha had the power to protect himself, Why would this poor monk snatch his Buddha fruit? Now that you have the opportunity to protect him and help him obtain Buddha fruit again, you might be able to mix in with the Buddha fruit like an envoy or arhat in the future. Wouldn't that be better than being cursed by the people of this primeval continent? Taoist Master. Sky-devouring beast knelt on the ground again and kowtowed with tears streaming down his face, saying, "How is this punishing this little one? This is simply helping this little one. This little one has a great ambition since young, and is willing to protect Maitreya Buddha. What you want this little one to do is precisely this little one's lifelong wish." Chapter 4268. Heaven-devouring beast, get up. Xiao Hua smiled. How could this old man not know about your narrow-mindedness? However, since you also have a great wish in your heart, this old man can't not fulfill your wish. Yes, Taoist. Heaven-devouring beast hurriedly got up and obediently stood at the side. This old man will keep you in the Kunlun mirror. When we return to this old man's world, I will release you. Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror and said, however, your origin, when we return to this old man's world, don't mention it again. Otherwise, this old man won't even need to find trouble with you. Other greedy cultivators will also make an example out of you. I believe you understand the trick of this better than this old man. If heaven-devouring beast was stupid, how could happiness-melting heavenly demon choose him? On the contrary, heaven-devouring beast looked simple and honest, but its heart was very cunning. How could it not know the importance of the matter Xiao Hua was talking about? It hurriedly replied, yes, this little one understands. Good. Don't resist, this old man will keep you first. While speaking, Xiao Hua shook the Kunlun mirror and kept heaven-devouring beast into its space. Seeing this, Buddha Bodhi praised, Namo Maitreya Buddha, Tenyu's action is really killing two birds with one stone. Ai, don't praise I anymore. Xiao Hua kept the Kunlun mirror and said, if not for heaven-devouring beast's sincerity towards Namo Maitreya Buddha, I would have already killed it. After speaking, Xiao Hua rubbed his hands and looked at the purple datura flower with fervent eyes. He asked Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua, fellow Taoist, how many ghosts are there in here? Countless. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua's tone was somewhat gloomy. Other than the living beings that were killed in this calamity, there are many that were killed in the past. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Buddha Bodhi couldn't help but chant Buddha's name. He put his palms together, and his face was filled with boundless benevolence. Heavenly demon. In the end, he is still a heavenly demon. Xiao Hua's heart suddenly sank, and a bitter taste appeared in his mouth. He turned to Buddha Bodhi and said, Master, do you think you want to transcend them? Or do you want I to lead them into the netherworld? Is there a difference? Buddha Bodhi smiled bitterly. Furthermore, with so many ghosts, how long will this poor monk transcend them? All right. Xiao Hua nodded and no longer held back. He released his consciousness, and the netherworld origin force also rushed into the bottom level of the heaven and earth pagoda. Countless ghosts were sucked into Xiao Hua's dimension along with the netherworld origin force. Because the space had already changed, Xiao Hua's mind also fell into the space along with these ghosts. Thus another strange scene puzzled Xiao Hua. However, these ghosts did not fall into the dark side of the Shenhua continent. Instead, they rushed into the golden light high up in the sky. It was as if there was a dark side of the space in the shadow of the golden light. Xiao Hua was shocked as he followed the ghost into the shadow of the golden light. However, something even more inexplicable happened. The ghost landed on the Yin side of Shenhua continent, but the position was slightly different. When he landed near the nether lotus and flew out of the Yin side of the space, he found himself in the space of Shenhua continent. Could it be that the Yin side of every space is the netherworld? And every netherworld is a part of the real netherworld? Xiao Hua pinched his chin and pondered as he looked at the various spaces in the endless void. Although Xiao Hua's mind and netherworld origin force were strong, it still took Xiao Hua more than 10 days to collect all the ghosts that the happiness-melting heavenly devil had been collecting for so many years. When the ghosts at the bottom level were all gone, the purple datura flower trembled and closed again. Then the osmanthus, azaleas, peonies, chrysanthemums, orchids, camellias, lotus, and plum flowers closed one after another. the complete heaven and earth pagoda appeared in front of everyone again. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua first put away the mountain and river seal. Then he raised his hand and patted the 9 provinces' cauldrons. The 9 provinces' cauldrons let out a rumbling sound and turned into a giant 9-colored hand that fell on top of the heaven and earth pagoda. As Confucian cultivator Xiaohua urged his true energy, the heaven and earth pagoda let out a loud rumbling sound and was pulled out from the ground by Xiaohua. As the heaven and earth pagoda flew out, the entire inverted space trembled violently. Finally, Xiaohua patted his own head, and his 5-colored true qi turned into a huge cloud that covered the 9 continents' cauldrons and the heaven and earth pagoda. With a roar, he absorbed them into his body. As soon as the heaven and earth pagoda disappeared from the inverted space, the second level of the heaven and earth pagoda cracked like glass. Then cracks appeared in the void. As soon as these cracks appeared, they immediately spread in all directions, and a large area of the void collapsed in these cracks. Boom boom. Looking at the countless cracks in the void, Xiaohua was overjoyed. He understood that the heaven and earth pagoda was the eye of the great world-destroying formation. Now that Xiaohua had absorbed the heaven and earth pagoda, the great world-destroying formation was also completely destroyed. These cracks in the void were the signs of the formation's collapse. But right at this moment, a fist-sized black hole suddenly appeared above the heads of Xiaohua and the others, where the previous spatial barrier was. Whether it was the normal space from before or the inverted space now, everything within it surged towards the black hole. Everything, whether it was boulders, mountains, trees, etc., turned into light and shadow and fell into the black hole. Moreover, when the light and shadow of the 2 spaces collided, it emitted an indescribable fluctuation, and a violent aura was emitted from the black hole. Not good. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense and immediately understood that this black hole was the starting point of the 2 spaces. Previously, when the heavenly demon was setting up the formation, everything was born from it. But now, the formation was going against the flow, and everything was going to be destroyed. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers were also inside, so they would inevitably be annihilated in this black hole. Damn it, the heavenly demon actually left a trick here. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly recalled his doppelgangers. Then he activated the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror's light beam entered the void, and an abnormal distorted void passage appeared. Xiaohua did not hesitate to escape into it. When Xiaohua came out of the distorted space, he stepped into the sky above the imperial palace. At this moment, the rain that filled the sky had stopped. The space above the dome of heaven shattered, and in a moment it was restored. The blazing sun was also hanging in the sky. Haha, Xiaohua laughed. Then he scanned with his divine sense and said, "Everything is done. As long as this innate heavy water disappears, the great desolate continent will return to the great desolate continent of the past." Just as Xiaohua finished speaking, boom, a huge explosion came from below him. Then a towering water pillar appeared again. Xiaohua hurriedly teleported away. When the water pillar fell, a huge whirlpool appeared at the location of Chaotian, Quebec. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense and immediately understood that after the black hole destroyed the 2 spaces, it produced a huge explosion, and a huge abyss was born under the ground. What a pity! Xiaohua recalled his divine sense and said regretfully, "This abyss is still not big enough to absorb the innate heavy water of the great desolate continent." However, before Xiaohua's regret disappeared, Xiaohua suddenly patted his forehead and said with a smile, "What is this? Since there is such an abyss, who cares about its size?" After saying that, Xiaohua activated the water escape technique and went to the bottom of the abyss. He sat down cross-legged and released his divine sense again, absorbing the innate heavy water near him into the space. As the saying goes, water flows to the lower places. There was such a bottomless abyss in the great desolate continent. How could the innate heavy water not flow here? After an unknown amount of time, when all the innate heavy water of the great desolate continent fell into the abyss, the whirlpool above the abyss that never stopped rotating began to slow down. Finally, the innate heavy water in the abyss disappeared, revealing Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the abyss. Perfect! Xiaohua collected the last of the innate heavy water and stood up with a smile. He clapped his hands and seemed to be talking to himself. Just when he was about to fly away, he smiled again and looked at the sky above the abyss. Master? At this time, 5 huge shadows appeared under the sun. One of the shadows in front cried out in surprise. Aren't they the great desolate 5 little ones? What did I say? How could the apocalypse of the great desolate continent be so easily eliminated? So it was Master who did it. The black jade Qilin was somewhat incoherent with excitement. He shouted in the air. If we didn't chase in the direction where the flood disappeared, we wouldn't know the truth. Xiaohua flew out of the abyss and looked at the excited black jade Qilin and the other great desolate 4 little ones. Although most of the scales of these 5 great desolate beasts were damaged, the brilliance on their bodies was also dim, and they looked very miserable. The joy between their brows was obvious. Xiaohua didn't say much. He first asked about the situation of the great desolate continent. When the great desolate 5 little ones roughly explained the situation, Xiaohua unconsciously frowned. The situation was far beyond his imagination. He still underestimated the power of the great demonic world annihilation formation. Although he almost didn't stop to find the flaws of the great formation, and then broke it without much delay, many strange beasts still died in the great desolate continent. Even the great desolate 5 little ones would have turned into white bones if they didn't use that mysterious formation to resist the flood together. Xiaohua released his divine sense and looked at the great desolate continent within tens of thousands of li. At this time, the great desolate continent was completely different from before. Those huge mountains and huge rocks were mostly corroded by the innate heavy water. Those towering peaks were no longer there. Everything looked similar to the scenery of the hidden immortal continent. However, the heaven and earth origin chi in his divine sense was still abundant. The water origin chi of heaven and earth origin chi was even denser than the other 4. Presumably, it wouldn't be long before this great desolate continent was restored to the great desolate continent full of vitality. Chapter 4269. After carefully sizing up the 5 little ones, Xiaohua's gaze fell on the ink jade Qilin. He said with a smile, Ink jade Qilin, I might leave this place very soon. You promised me before that wherever I go, you'll follow me. Do you still keep your word? The ink jade Qilin didn't expect Xiaohua to ask this as soon as they met. He unconsciously hesitated, but a moment later, he resolutely replied, Master, after this apocalyptic flood, I know what is called sincere unity and helping each other in the same boat. Therefore, I'm unwilling to leave them. If old Master insists on this lowly one following, this lowly one will definitely follow without any complaints. However, if old Master can show mercy and bring all of them along, that would be for the best. Hee, why would I bring you along? Xiaohua smiled. Now that the great disaster of the wilderness has just passed, there are many things waiting to be done. You're the 5 little ones. How can you leave the wilderness? Forget it. Let the agreement between you and this old man go up in smoke. I only hope that you can restrain your unruly character in the future, and treat the weak creatures of the wilderness well. Thank you, Master. The ink jade Qilin was overjoyed. He knelt down in front of Xiaohua and thanked him endlessly. The gold toad, multicolored peacock, black tortoise and black sky white tiger were also happy and knelt down. Seeing the 5 little ones thanking him, Xiaohua said with a smile, It's rare for you all to be enlightened. As the saying goes, a prodigal son is better than gold. Today, I'll also give you some benefits. With that, Xiaohua raised his hand, and a crystal light appeared on his fingers. Then, as if he had grown 5 arms, 5 similar fingers fell on the foreheads of the 5 little beasts of the great desolation. Boom! The ink jade Qilin and the others felt their vision go dark. Countless wilderness catalog poured into their minds like a tide. They were shocked and hurriedly closed their eyes to comprehend. Xiaohua waved his sleeve and moved the 5 little ones to the ground. Then he turned into the wind and floated away. After several tens of days, when the 5 little ones woke up, where was Xiaohua? What the 5 young ones of the primordial world did not expect was that Xiaohua had once again arrived at the heaven-reaching peak. Looking at the collapsed Tongtian peak, the mountain looked like the backbone of a defeated hero. Its unyielding and indestructible aura was still emanating from it under the scorching sun. The strange beasts of the eldritch continent did not dare to get too close to it. Xiaohua could not help but sigh and say, Tongtian Peak was originally innocent, but it fell into the hands of the heavenly demon of the Eldritch continent. It was a grave sin. The entire Eldritch continent was almost destroyed because of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua nodded. Heaven Connecting Peak is the crystallization of the heart's blood of billions of stone giants. They also used their lives to build it. If he were to be placed in the Yorwild's continent, he would most likely be treated as a pillar of shame. No one knows what will happen in the future. The material of the Heaven's Connecting Peak seems to be very strange, and the refining method is also very mysterious. It's not something that I can see through. Green-robed Xiaohua's eyes were also shining. Moreover, under the innate heavy water, everything in the Eldritch continent was corroded. Only Tongtian Peak was not damaged in the slightest. This thing should be of great use. Actually, Phoenix Body Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and suggested, the material needed to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven connecting staff doesn't seem to be something like Tongtian Peak. However, since it's a divine object made by heaven, we shouldn't waste it. We might as well collect it first and see if it's useful in the future. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He wrapped his mind around Tongtian Peak and tried to collect it. He shook his head and said, this thing was refined by the heavenly demon divine ability. Its weight has long exceeded I's ability. It's impossible to collect it in a short time. What a pity. The doppelgangers all felt that it was a pity. Just as Xiaohua turned and was about to fly away, Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi suddenly spoke at the same time. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. Oh. Xiaohua stared blankly, then said with a smile on his face, could it be that you two fellow Taoists have a way? Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi flew to Tongtian Peak. Dragon Vein Xiaohua first released his origin sense, sweeping from the top to the bottom of Tongtian Peak, while Buddha Bodhi released his Buddhist sense from the bottom to the top. After the two doppelgangers finished their inspection, they looked at each other and smiled. Dragon Vein Xiaohua flew in front of Xiaohua and said with a smile, congratulations, fellow Taoist. Although this Tongtian Peak is incomparably large, every inch of it is refined by the secret techniques of my Dragon Clan and Buddhist sect. If I and Master Bodhi work together, and with the cooperation of all fellow Taoists, we have a 60% chance of collecting it. Excellent. Xiaohua clapped his hands, bowed and said, thank you for your trouble. Fellow Taoist Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua and Buddha Subhoodie had a careful discussion for several days. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers listened attentively at the side. When the discussion was over, Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua revealed his 5-clawed true dragon form. The dragon crystal that had not yet been refined transformed into a scale armor and appeared outside his dragon body. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua roared loudly. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua's dragon armor emitted a dragon breath that made tens of thousands of people prostrate themselves before falling onto one end of Tongtian Peak. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua's dragon breath seeped out from the depths of Tongtian Peak, transforming into an inch-long dragon form that swam towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. At the other end of the broken Tongtian Peak, Buddha Subhoodie held the Tree of 7 Wonders in his hand and chanted scriptures. 7 rays of light fell onto Tongtian Peak. Golden runes similarly seeped out from the light. These golden runes were like Bodhi trees that were more than an inch long, spreading towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. It took no less than 10 days for the dragon marks and Bodhi trees to completely cover the broken section of Tongtian Peak. Sure enough, it was as Dragon Vein Xiaohua said. Within every inch of space of Tongtian Peak, the dragon marks and Bodhi trees were very abstrusely intertwined. A kind of heaven and earth truth faintly emerged from within. Alas, Xiaohua saw this scene and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The heavenly Tao is boundless, but I was born with a cliff. Rise! Dragon Vein Xiaohua let out a dragon roar from one side of Tongtian Peak, and hundreds of millions of dragon marks rushed up along with the dragon roar. Rise! Buddha Bodhi opened his mouth almost at the same time, chanting Buddha's name. The wonderful Tree of 7 Treasures was also lifted up as heavy as 10,000 caddies, and hundreds of millions of Bodhi trees also soared into the sky along with the dragon marks. Boom! The entire earth trembled, and that huge broken Tongtian Peak actually showed signs of being lifted up. Seeing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. At the same time he released his consciousness, he shouted, "Fellow Taoists, please make your move." "Rise!" green-robed Xiaohua shouted loudly, and took out the sword gourd. Tens of thousands of spirit execution vital light flew out, and wrapped around a part of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua also didn't show any weakness. 9 cauldrons flew out, and the 5-colored true qi also turned into a huge cauldron shape, wrapping around a part of Tongtian Peak. Phoenix body Xiaohua let out a long cry, and flew to the bottom of Tongtian Peak. His whole body flickered with the power of the moon and stars, and countless invisible light pillars descended from the sky, also lifting up a part of Tongtian Peak. Devil spirit Xiaohua landed in another place. Devil light surged around his body, and he turned into a 10,000 zhang tall devil body. That big hand firmly grasped the mountain rocks of Tongtian Peak, and countless devils roared as they lifted up Tongtian Peak. Bone tempering Xiaohua took out the celestial white bone. The 3-headed, 6-armed celestial white bone spewed out a light pillar that covered Tongtian Peak. The 6 arms, along with the expansion of the avatar, directly lifted up the last part of Tongtian Peak with their hands. Withdraw. Seeing that the huge broken Tongtian Peak was being moved by the concerted efforts of the many clones, Xiaohua hurriedly urged his secret technique, and his consciousness mixed with divine sense fell on Tongtian Peak. Withdraw. Sensing Xiaohua's secret technique, the many clones urged their divine abilities at the same time. When a strange howl sounded, and it seemed like the nearby space was collapsing and bursting. Along with this howl, the broken Tongtian Peak was lifted up a few inches, and that incomparably huge broken Tongtian Peak immediately and strangely disappeared. Hong hong hong. Along with the disappearance of the broken Tongtian Peak, countless explosions and uncontrollable fluctuations crazily rushed out everywhere. Whether it was Dragon Vein Xiaohua, Buddha Bodhi, or even Phoenix Body Xiaohua, their bodies flashed with indescribable brilliance as they hurriedly urged their secret techniques to suppress the divine abilities that were about to go out of control. Needless to say, Xiaohua's face was already pale gold, and his entire body showed signs of collapsing. There were faint traces of blood between his eyebrows, and the surface of his Niwan palace was bursting with various innate divine seals. Xiaohua's divine sense and mind were already exhausted. Xiaohua didn't dare to say anything, and he hurriedly took some medicinal pellets to adjust his breathing. The other clones also sat cross-legged in various places and quietly cultivated. After a few months, the recovered Xiaohua and his clones once again put the other half of the broken Tongtian Peak into the space, and then rather weakly left Tongtian Peak and flew towards the teleportation array. The teleportation array was the key for Xiaohua to leave the Great Desolate Continent, so outside the teleportation array, there was a capital heavenly star array personally set up by green-robed Xiaohua. Seeing that the capital heavenly star array hadn't suffered any damage, Xiaohua only checked it for a moment, and then left Confucian cultivator Xiaohua in the array, letting him use the Confucian secret technique to continue modifying the teleportation array. He took the other clones to the magma where they first encountered the stone giant. The surface of the magma was completely covered by innate heavy water, and the thick magma stones were several hundred li deep. However, it was also because of the innate heavy water's cover that an extremely fierce power was constantly brewing and roaring under the magma. Previously, when the flood was overflowing, the innate heavy water constantly seeped in, extinguishing this power bit by bit. Now the innate heavy water no longer existed, and after the heat of the magma solidified the innate heavy water, it penetrated to the surface again. Great! Xiaohua looked at all this, and couldn't help but clap his hands in praise. The heavenly Tao is just, and all things have their Tao. But when it's destroyed, the germination of rebirth has already been deeply implanted. This Xiao thought that although this apocalypse had disappeared, after all, the Great Desolate Continent had been ravaged by the innate heavy water for many days, and this injury was extremely difficult to recover from. But now, it seems that things are far from what this Xiao can speculate. Perhaps in a few days, when the magma breaks through the surface, a new world will arrive. Chapter 4270. More than that, soul cultivator Xiaohua also smiled. He raised his hand and pointed to the distance. That was not where the magma was, but after the innate heavy water corroded the hill, it seeped into the ground. But from the surface, it was mottled with rocks, completely devoid of life. However, the place Xiaohua pointed to was the place where the innate heavy water did not seep in. There were many seeds emitting green shadows, and clusters of vigorous life force were already brewing there. Life and death, death and life. Death is the beginning of life, and at the same time, life is also the beginning of death. There is a glimmer of life in any apocalypse. The evolution of the heavenly Tao is just like this. Witnessing death and 10,000 layers of life force, Phoenix body Xiaohua was extremely emotional, and shouted happily. We can also treat this apocalypse as the arrival of another golden age. Not bad, not bad. Bonehone Xiaohua also clapped and said. In the past, the stone giants were as simple and honest as I, and were always bullied by others. In the future, they will be the powerhouses of this great desolate continent. Hearing this, Xiaohua unconsciously muttered to himself. Green-robed Xiaohua understood Xiaohua's narrow-mindedness the most. He looked at Xiaohua with a smile that was not a smile and said, "What? Is fellow Taoist still unwilling?" Xiaohua pinched his chin and said with a rather sinister smile, "Hee in I's space, even birds have to pluck a feather. The stone giants, the wood giants, and the others are hiding from a disaster here. How can I let them go so easily?" Xiaohua was naturally not as narrow-minded as others thought. Previously, when there was only one Shenhua continent, Xiaohua would definitely not hesitate to release these strange beasts. But now there were many continents in his space, and that golden light was clearly corresponding to the high-level space of the upper realm. If Xiaohua left the great desolate continent, where would he find strange beasts corresponding to the high-level space? Today, when he released these strange beasts, the space would become barren, and he was somewhat unwilling. "Fellow Taoist, why are you in a daze?" Green-robed Xiaohua disdainfully said. His attitude was really a bit like, "You have white hair all over your body, and you call others a demon." He said, "You collected so many souls in the imperial palace. Which one of them after reincarnation didn't become strange beasts? These beasts are just a drop in the ocean compared to them." Xiaohua's heart was moved after hearing the green-robed Xiaohua's words. However, when he thought about it carefully, he snorted disdainfully. If the beasts that died in the Great Desolation Continent could only be reincarnated into the Great Desolation Continent, then Lord Dragon God and Maitreya Buddha couldn't be reincarnated into the hidden immortal continent and Dawn Rain continent. "What do you know?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Even Namo Maitreya Buddha doesn't dare to speak about the mysteries of reincarnation. How much can you possibly know?" "How about this?" The soul cultivator Xiaohua suggested. "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to leave all the primitive beasts here. You can leave some of them in pairs and send the rest back to the primitive continent." "Good." Xiaohua laughed heartily, but after clapping his hands he blinked his eyes and asked, "The stone giants don't seem to differentiate between male and female. Isn't this giving I a difficult problem?" Xiaohua's words were naturally a joke. However, just as he was about to enter the space, boom boom, a loud sound came from afar. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his head and saw a pillar of flame mixed with black smoke in the distant sky. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, when he saw everything clearly, his face was not shocked but happy instead. He said with a smile, "There seems to be magma gushing out from the ground in front of us. Not to mention other things, the destruction of the innate heavy water is about to be eliminated in a few dozen li of magma." "Yes, yes." The doppelgangers also said with a smile, "Let's go take a look." Xiaohua and the others were not in a hurry. They slowly flew over, and also released their divine sense to check other places along the way. Just as they saw, the area where the stone giants lived was where the magma was more active. The innate heavy water could only cover it for a while. Now, the magma everywhere had begun to erupt eagerly. Now, the magma had already erupted in places where the surface was more solid, and less innate heavy water had penetrated. When Xiaohua and the others arrived, the gushing magma had already gradually decreased. However, there was still a lot of powder that drifted to many places. When the powder landed, it covered the surface corroded by the innate heavy water. Xiaohua's figure landed, and picked up some grayish-black powder from the ground. He twirled it between his index finger and thumb a few times, then put it in front of his nose and sniffed. Although there was a pungent smell, Xiaohua's face still revealed a smile and said, "Not bad, this thing is very useful. It won't be long before the place where it lands will become fertile soil." "Ah, this. You can even know this?" The green-robed Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly landed. He imitated Xiaohua and twirled some powder and sniffed it. Other than the pungent smell, he really couldn't smell anything else. "This is farming that I learned since I was young," Xiaohua said with a smile. "How can you know?" "Since you were young? Is it here?" The green-robed Xiaohua asked curiously. The smile on Xiaohua's face faded a little. He raised his head and looked at the dusk sky, then looked at the still unfamiliar land. He shook his head slightly and said, I don't know at this time." "Hee, if there's a chance, I want to see what kind of place you live," the green-robed Xiaohua said with a mischievous smile. "I also want to learn how to smell this powder." "Cultivate seriously," Xiaohua nodded. "When we succeed in our divine ability, there will definitely be a chance." "And I believe there will definitely be a chance." The green-robed Xiaohua nodded firmly. His gaze seemed to pass through the sky, through the turbulence of the world, and even more so through Xiaohua's memories. Xiaohua originally wanted to send out the strange beasts from the space, but seeing the great changes on the surface of the great desolate continent, he wasn't in a hurry. He simply brought his clones and flew into the depths of the great desolate continent. Along the way, pillars of fire filled the sky, black smoke filled the sky, and even many places collapsed. Some mountain ranges stretched out from the ground along with the eruption of magma. Seeing that the air was so unbearable, Xiaohua and the soul cultivator Xiaohua activated the lightning and thunder technique again. The sky was densely covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The rainstorm was born again. However, this time the rainstorm wasn't the Xiantian heavy water, but the real rain. Xiaohua didn't use this technique of clouds and rain, but once he used it, it was beyond his control. After all, the entire great desolate continent hadn't had any rain for many years. After the Xiantian heavy water, the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth that was imprisoned by the heaven and earth pagoda's formation began to recover. The dark rain in the sky not only had a tendency to continue, but also spread towards the great desolate continent. No way. Looking at the whole world, the rain poured down, the magma roared, the mountains rose up, and the rivers formed into rivers. Xiaohua cried out like a frightened bird. "I won't also create a world-ending disaster, right?" "Haha, don't worry, fellow Taoist." Phoenix body Xiaohua laughed. "Although the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth in this world is raging, it's all under the suppression of the other origin energies of heaven and earth. The power of the stars and moon in the distance has also begun to descend." Dozens of days passed like this, and the sky began to clear up. A ray of sunlight pierced through the thick dark clouds in the sky like a giant sword. Then, all the dark clouds began to dissipate. Fierce winds suddenly rose, and a seven-colored rainbow bridge ran through the world. The whole great desolate continent seemed to have just been cleansed, and was exceptionally clean. It really was a sign of another kind of golden age coming. Fellow Taoist bone tempering, how about you go take a look at the situation underground? Xiaohua's divine sense had already seen it, but he still didn't feel at ease, and ordered bone tempering Xiaohua to go. Before long, bone tempering Xiaohua returned and reported, "Fellow Taoist, there's still some magma surging under the ground, but most of it has already stabilized." Good Xiaohua was overjoyed, and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, now we can release the strange beasts we've taken in." Then, Xiaohua's divine sense entered the space, and according to Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's suggestion, he left some of the weaker strange beasts in pairs, and released the rest. When collecting the strange beasts, all the Fortune Gate's disciples were dispatched, and it took a long time to complete. When releasing the strange beasts, there was no need to mobilize the Fortune Gate's disciples. Xiaohua and his avatars only needed to go to various places, and find a suitable place to throw these strange beasts into, and let them settle down on their own. After being educated, these strange beasts were no longer comparable to their former selves. Not to mention anything else, just the stone giants. These stone giants looked at the place that was completely different from before and the unfamiliar environment, But they didn't panic at all. Those with spiritual power used some of their magical powers to break the hard surface of the magma. Those without spiritual power started to work in the deep hole that they broke open. With the stone giants' cooperation, they soon opened a passage to the magma. With the magma, the stone giants had a home, and each of them looked for their own nest. Several months passed in this manner. When Xiaohua sent the last batch of strange beasts into a mountain range, he finally let out a long sigh of relief and soared into the sky. When he came to a stop, as far as his eyes could see, a scene of lush greenery fell into his eyes. A continuous rain had sent enough water to the earth, and the seeds of life under the dry earth had the opportunity to grow. They couldn't bear the loneliness and poked their heads out from the earth. Not to mention, Xiaohua had already prepared food seeds and spiritual seeds in the space. When his avatars sent out the strange beasts, they also threw these food seeds and spiritual seeds on the desolate mainland's land. Several months' time was enough for these food seeds and spiritual seeds to germinate, and also enough time for vegetation to cover the land and mountains. With green, would a colorful life be far away? Chapter 4271. Ha ha ha, it's a success. Green-robed Xiaohua proudly roared at the ground without using a trace of magic power. Xiaohua listened to the sound disappear in the sky and smiled without saying anything. In the next few days, Phoenix Body Xiaohua, Green-robed Xiaohua, and the others returned to the space early or late. Each of them stood beside Xiaohua with eyes full of hope. Looking at the land of hope, their hearts were brimming with pride. Describing them as the birth of a new world in their hands was too much of a merit, but the fact that a new world was preserved in their hands was well deserved. Such merit and fortune were not things that ordinary cultivators could come across. And similarly, they were not things that ordinary cultivators could obtain. It's just a matter of time. It's not a success. Green-robed Xiaohua said after his excitement died down. Green-robed Xiaohua was stunned. He scratched his head and asked curiously, "There are no more strange beasts in the space? Could it be that fellow Taoist has hidden some?" Damn it, Xiaohua was sweating in his heart. He first brought the strange beasts out of the star halo in the sky, and sent them to the space where Shenhua continent was located. Then he had these clones send them to various places. Whether there were any strange beasts in the star halo or not, the clones didn't know. However, Green-robed Xiaohua exposed it with a single sentence. Obviously, he had the same small plan as Xiaohua. The strange beasts have been properly arranged, but the disciples of fragrance cult have not been arranged yet. Xiaohua said unhappily. "Oh, these little things." Green-robed Xiaohua said indifferently. "Isn't it just looking for a place with them? Isn't that easy?" Green-robed Xiaohua said with a smile. Green-robed fellow Taoist is right. The previous desolate continent was not suitable for the human race, but after the apocalypse, although the environment is still different from the hidden immortal continent, it is enough for the disciples of fragrance cult to survive. I pass by a place that is very suitable for these disciples. Xiaohua's face lit up. Just as he was about to ask, a figure flashed beside him. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua appeared in the air. "How was it?" Xiaohua's eyes lit up again and asked hurriedly. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua said with a smile that was neither arrogant nor humble. "Fellow Taoists, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." "Good." Xiaohua clapped and said. "Fellow Taoist has made a great contribution." "You flatter me." Confucian cultivator Xiaohua waved his hand and said. "It's all thanks to fellow immortal green-robed and fellow immortal soul cultivator. The teleportation formation you constructed was very good. With this foundation, this little one's Confucian cultivation secret technique will be very easy to succeed. Therefore, this little one doesn't dare to claim credit." "Haha, you're welcome, you're welcome." The green-robed Xiaohua proudly looked at Xiaohua and said with a smile. "I can also be of great use now. It's a pity that no one even knows his name now." Xiaohua was first stunned, and then he understood that this green-robed Xiaohua's wisdom and character were the most mature. Now he wants to ask for a status from me. Many thanks to the Thunderbolt Venerable. Xiaohua thanked the green-robed Xiaohua. In the future, there will no longer be a green-robed Xiaohua in this world, only the Thunderbolt Immortal. "Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist Xiao, you're welcome, you're welcome." The Thunderbolt Immortal happily helped Xiaohua up. Many thanks to Taoist Wu. Xiaohua then saluted the soul cultivator Xiaohua and said, "In the future, there will be no soul cultivator Xiaohua in this family, only shamans." Shamans didn't feel much about this status, nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist, do as you please." Soon after, Xiaohua thanked all his clones one by one, and declared that there will no longer be a clone Xiaohua in this world. "Now, we should be able to pass through the time turbulence, right?" Xiaohua then asked Wenchu somewhat worriedly. How would Wenchu know? He could only shake his head and said with a bitter smile, "There should be no problem with this sage information, but before we use it, who knows what kind of accident will happen? AI, we must not have any more accidents." Xiaohua sighed. "We have been wandering in the outside world for too long. We have been here for several tens of thousands of years. We don't care about this anymore." The Thunderbolt Immortal bluntly attacked. If Xian wants to get married, even an immortal emperor would not be able to stop her. "You really have a crow's mouth." Shaman scolded in both anger and amusement. "Let's go, fellow Taoist Feng Wu. Let us take a look at that place." Xiaohua waved his hand, as if he wanted to get rid of these worries, and said, "Okay." Feng Wu let out a long cry, spread her wings and flew to a place. In just a few days, Xiaohua and the others arrived at a huge mountain range. This mountain range was thousands of feet high, surrounded by rivers, and above the mountain range were ancient trees and vegetation. Previously, Feng Wu had sowed some seeds of grain and some spiritual herbs and gradually took shape. "Great! This is a blessed land." Xiaohua's divine sense swept over, and immediately said with a smile, "The disciples of the fragrance cult will be able to pass down the incense of the fragrance cult." The Thunderbolt Immortal pondered for a moment, and said, "There seems to be some long spike beasts nearby. These long spike beasts like to eat small animals. I am afraid that the disciples of the fragrance cult will not be safe here." Xiaohua rolled his eyes, and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What, fellow Taoist Feng Wu wants to do something?" "Of course." The Thunderbolt Immortal said proudly, "Although they are disciples of the fragrance cult, they have nothing to do with I. But after all, they are of the human race. How can I just stand by and watch? Then I will have to trouble you, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua was very gratified, and he cupped his hands and smiled. "We will also help." Wu Wenchu, Feng Wu, and even Tianren and Shi came to join in the fun. Thus, everyone joined hands, and laid down a great formation within a radius of 10,000 li. It took them several months to complete their task. However, in the end, all the cultivators were dumbfounded. This great formation had a Dharma formation, an Origin formation, a Devil formation, and even a Soul formation. Although the power of the great formation was there, no one could activate it. Thus everyone looked at Xiaohua, who knew that Xiaohua turned a deaf ear to everyone's expectations, and he flew up, looked at the ground, and then waved his hand and said, "Everyone, we will hide ourselves first. I will release the disciples of the fragrance cult from the Shenhua continent." Although the sect leader of the fragrance cult did not say anything, when he handed the disciples over to I, he did not let the disciples see I's face, because he did not want us to leave any impression on the disciples of the fragrance cult. Is there a need for that? The Thunderbolt Immortal flew up with some disdain, and like everyone else he hid himself, but he still had some complaints. When Xiaohua placed the disciples of the aroma religion in the mountain range, he placed all the cultivation methods, pills, spirit herbs, and magic tools aside. His heart was moved again, and he also placed some of the Tao sect's cultivation methods and secret techniques he had obtained in the aroma religion. He only promised not to embezzle the things of the fragrance cult, but he did not promise not to give them more things. The disciples of the fragrance cult had inherited the method of cultivating the primordial spirit, and also the method of cultivating the nascent soul. It was not too much, was it? After doing all this, Xiaohua's figure once again teleported to a high altitude, and his hands began to form hand seals. Taoist magic, Confucian cultivation methods, soul cultivation methods, and demonic cultivation methods. When the same magic power, demonic qi, and so on turned into crystals and fell into the void, the entire sky was filled with 9 brilliant colors, and all kinds of fluctuations were like dragons dancing in the air. Rumbling sounds were more deafening than thunder. Xiaohua's figure turned into a golden body, and when he raised his hands, dozens of rainbow-colored halos were born from his hands, and they were scattered everywhere like chains. All the disciples of the fragrance cult opened their mouths in surprise, and were somewhat at a loss. But a strange rumbling sound began to be born from the thunder, like the roar of a god. Then Xiaohua's golden body suddenly withdrew, and the chains fell into his hands, followed by tens of thousands of restrictions of various colors. When these restrictions fell into Xiaohua's hands, he slowly waved his hands and shouted, "Go!" The entire brilliance condensed into the shape of a halo. Xiaohua then waved his hand and a jade eye appeared. When Xiaohua channeled his magic power, the halo hit the jade eye. Clang! The jade eye condensed into the shape of a tiger talisman. Xiaohua picked up the tiger talisman and casually threw it to a disciple of the fragrance cult. Then he said, "This place is no longer a ruin. This mountain range is where you all will live in the future. In order for you all to survive here, this old man has already built a formation in the nearby mountains. This is the proof to enter and exit the formation. You all should take care of it. You don't need to ask who this old man is. You just need to remember to live well here and cultivate. As long as the orthodoxy of the incense religion can be carried down safely, it will be your contribution." With that, Xiaohua didn't care about what the tens of thousands of disciples of the fragrance cult were thinking. He waved his hands again, and tens of thousands of thunderbolts fell on the formation. The entire formation slowly lit up, and Xiaohua's figure turned into a rainbow and flew towards the location of the sun in the sky. We thank Senior. The disciples of the fragrance cult were shocked by Xiaohua's big move, and they all prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. After Xiaohua left the mountain range, the thunderbolt immortal almost held his stomach and laughed. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, "Dao friend, I really admire you." Although the fragrance cult's ancestor didn't want his disciples to see Dao friend's appearance, but Dao friend's actions will leave an impression in their hearts. Won't it be even more unforgettable than seeing Dao friend's appearance? Xiaohua didn't feel embarrassed seeing that his petty actions were seen through by the thunderbolt immortal. He stiffened his neck and retorted, "What? Do you not want to leave your name? Otherwise, you'll be inside the formation." When he saw that Xiaohua was about to expose his past, the lightning Daoist's face flushed red, and he was about to interrupt Xiaohua. However, at this moment, the sound of bamboo flutes suddenly resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. After that, hundreds of millions of flowers appeared out of thin air. At the same time, over 10 dragons and phoenixes appeared in midair, while waves of golden threads descended like rain from above Xiaohua and the others. What's going on? The thunderbolt immortal turned pale with fright. Because of the birth of these flowers, the entire world was imprisoned. Not to mention sound, even thoughts were difficult to move. Chapter 4272. Just as the thunderbolt immortal's doubts were born, a myriad of phenomena appeared in the surrounding 100 li of space. Farmers plowing the fields, mulberry people raising silkworms, fishermen fishing, hundreds of children chanting, thousands of Buddhas chanting scriptures, and thousands of countries dying. In short, all kinds of worldly phenomena appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. At the same time, a kind of incense that Xiaohua had never smelled before appeared in his surroundings. This incense was very strange. When Xiaohua sniffed it, it was as if the entire space was filled with this incense. Moreover, the 100 meridians in his body, and the 13200 small points in his body were intoxicated by this incense. A kind of lazy, powerless, and even decadent feeling was naturally born. However, this feeling was only limited to his body. His spirit and thoughts were incomparably active. Previously, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao and Xiaohua of the karma had passed on to him, but now, in just a short moment, they were all absorbed by him. What was special was that the wood, wind, and lightning essences that had just been absorbed by Xiaohua's body were fusing dozens of times faster than before. Following this fusion, Xiaohua's mind expanded in all directions without limit, like a leisurely cloud. Kung kung kung, another wave of sound rang out from an unknown place. Within this sound, pillars of righteous qi were born like sky-reaching peaks, crazily falling into the void. The originally thin righteous qi immediately filled up. Following the righteous qi's birth, the flying flowers actually shattered, turning into a hurricane that fell into Xiaohua's body. After the time it took to eat a meal, the sound, the 100 forms, and even the light and shadows also shrank, crazily falling into Xiaohua's body. Kung like the sound of a harp breaking. All the light and shadows and illusions disappeared in this sound. At the same time, an even stranger shadow flew out from Xiaohua's body, landing at the place where the flying flowers were and disappearing. What's going on? The celestial stood blankly in the air, not knowing what to do. As for Xiaohua, he was dumbstruck. He looked into the distance, his expression like water, not knowing what he was thinking. Sandalwood suddenly, Bodhi cried out in alarm. Buddha fire. Buddha fire condensed into Buddha crystal. Is it a crystal smaller than an ant? Golden in color and completely transparent? Xiaohua asked indifferently. Bodhi's head bobbed up and down like a chick pecking at rice, far from his usual calm demeanor. There are no humans in the great wasteland continent, and we brought the human race in from the ruins. Xiaohua explained. Now we've even averted the apocalypse. These disciples of the incense cult have not only inherited the Tao teachings of the Taoist sect, but they've also inherited the flames of our human race. Not to mention the inheritance of the incense cult, the incense merit of the human race belongs to us. Although I didn't create humans for no reason, the merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them belongs to none other than me. Therefore, this flying flower is a phenomenon caused by the descent of righteous energy from the heavens. It is also the beginning of the process of us receiving the merit of splitting the heavens and condensing the godhood. Divine spark? The thunderclap immortal turned pale with fright. What is the divine spark? It sounds so high and mighty. Xiaohua shrugged and said with a bitter smile. I don't know either. I reckon it's something that matches the body of a half-god. Fellow Taoist, were you depressed because of this just now? Wen Chu was also somewhat puzzled. No. Xiaohua shook his head and looked into the distance with some puzzlement. I just felt like I lost something. And the thing I lost is very rare and precious. This feeling is very strange. What did you lose? The thunderclap immortal couldn't be bothered to ask about the godhood, and continued to ask. I don't know either, but I have a feeling that I left this place for myself. As if it was nourished by the so-called merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them. It's too profound. I find it hard to understand. Wen Chu shook his head in puzzlement. However, back then, I received the all-living beings point Wen Chu because of the merit of teaching. Fellow Taoists' merit of opening the heavens must be even more powerful than the merit of teaching, right? I'm afraid that you'll only be able to discover the profoundness of this after charging into the great wasteland continent again. Aha, that's right. Xiaohua laughed loudly and looked around. Since there was a first time, why can't there be a second time or a third time? When this Xiao comes again in the future, this place will definitely be a new world. At this moment, the shamaness suddenly cried out in alarm. Fellow Taoist, I seem to have sensed the spiritual sense mark of the Great Snow Mountain. Can you confirm? Xiaohua's heart instantly weakened and he asked worriedly. How would I know? The shamaness hurriedly explained. I can only sense the indistinct spiritual sense mark extremely far away. How would I know if it's actually from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Let's go. Xiaohua suddenly realized. Who cares if it's from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Right now, the most important thing is for us to leave. After saying that, except for the shamaness, all the other clones entered Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua and the shamaness simultaneously activated the going south, going north, going south, going north technique, and entered the teleportation array under the mountain range. Hurry! Xiaohua landed in the array and impatiently waved his hand. 9 dragon crystals fell into the teleportation array, and then he dragged the Thunderbolt Immortal and Wen Chu out. Together with the shamaness, the 3 clones activated the teleportation array. Under the activation of the 9 dragon crystals, the Soul Cultivator and the Scholar Cultivator gradually found the direction of the teleportation array. Xiaohua was unable to contain his joy as he entered the teleportation array and shouted. Fellow Taoists, Success or failure depends on this one move. Gotcha. At this moment, the teleportation array suddenly rumbled and stopped. The already formed teleportation channel also disappeared. What's going on? Xiaohua turned pale with fright and asked, "Fellow Taoist Wu, what happened?" It seems the shamaness couldn't confirm and hesitated. The teleportation channel seems to have hit something. What did you hit? Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He pointed at the dragon crystals that had already turned into powder and said, "Just hitting something can cause the void channel to collapse?" I also don't know. The outside of the wilderness is a turbulent flow of time. Anything strange can happen? The shamaness somewhat helplessly replied. It was really strange. The scene he saw when he fell into the wilderness that day suddenly appeared in Xiaohua's mind. It was a light and shadow. A thin and tall figure appeared in it. That figure was lying helplessly, holding the sword embryo in its right hand, as if it had already fainted. Beside the figure were the black dog and the yellow marten. After this light and shadow appeared, suddenly an indescribable ripple extended behind the figure. It was similar to the fluctuation of the teleportation channel Xiaohua used to enter the wilderness. But now that he thought about it, this fluctuation came from behind the light and shadow. In other words, it rushed out from the wilderness. How could it possibly collide with the teleportation channel Xiaohua entered? That day, when the fluctuation collided with the teleportation channel the light and shadow was in, it produced a strange change. The light and shadow shook and quickly disappeared. Now that he thought about it, he was afraid that it fell into the forward ripple, which was the direction of his teleportation channel. Could it be? Xiaohua's heart was greatly shaken. Could it be that the thin and tall figure? Is this Xiao who still hasn't obtained the Dawn Rain continent? Fellow Taoist, not allowing Xiaohua to think more, the shamaness urged again. Do we still need to activate it now? Of course. A moment ago, Xiaohua still felt that his future was uncertain. But now, Xiaohua was full of confidence. He waved his hand and took out 9 dragon crystals, instructing, "Quickly, let's activate the array. This time, our target will definitely be the hidden immortal continent." Okay. The shamaness, the thunderbolt immortal, and Wenchu's spirits were shaken. They activated the teleportation channel. When a ball of brilliance appeared from the teleportation channel, the shamaness activated the channel, which directly pierced into the void. The 3 clones quickly fell into Xiaohua's space. When Xiaohua stepped into the void, he somewhat lingered as he looked at the pitch-black darkness outside the great array. He thought to himself, "The wilderness, this Xiao is leaving. Perhaps in the future, there will be a chance to come back. Or perhaps, when I come back again, the entire wilderness will be different." As the entire teleportation channel flashed, Xiaohua's figure disappeared. At the same time that Xiaohua's figure disappeared, the teleportation channel shook again. A crack actually appeared on the entire teleportation channel. This crack directly pierced into the void, and went more than 10 li above the teleportation channel. Immediately, the entire void trembled for a moment and actually froze. The crack in the void existed just like that between the great array and the mountain peak. After an unknown period of time, perhaps 100,000 years, or 1,000,000 years, or even 100 million years, that spatial crack once again shook violently, and a resplendent brilliance was born from within the crack. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Like a thunderclap, the entire spatial crack in the array began to distort. Woo, the sound of wind whistling rose again. And within the light and shadow, for extremely long shadows could be seen rushing out from the spatial crack. The one in front was the winged Sakura. The demonic horn of this beast Sakura had already lost its fluctuation. Her figure crashed into the transmission array, and unexpectedly, the transmission array was smashed into pieces. Immediately after, the unconscious figures of Yu Mingxin, Yang Haoya, and Wan Wuxin appeared again. They also crashed into the teleportation channel. The teleportation channel originally had some cracks. At this moment, 3 humans and 1 demon came with the power of teleportation, and immediately destroyed the teleportation channel. Where is this place? Several days later, Sakura was the first to wake up. She opened her eyes wide and looked around. Then she looked at the 3 humans. Her face immediately turned sinister. However, just as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws, and was about to pounce on them. The space outside the teleportation channel emitted a strange beast's roar. Sakura was slightly taken aback. She hurriedly flew out of the teleportation channel. When she saw the boiling lava outside and a strange beast with a big body, small head, and slender neck in the lava, she couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 4273. Stunned, Indra released his devil sense again. Looking at the barren surroundings, he rolled his eyes and said to himself with a smile, "This place is actually not the ruins. Since there is no more fighting, why should I be in such a hurry to kill the three of them? Without them, wouldn't this world be too lonely? So what if I play with them?" After saying that, Indra flew away without looking back, no longer paying attention to Yu Mingxin and the other two. After a few days, Yu Mingxin slowly woke up. She looked around in surprise and even flew out to take a look. Then she hurriedly woke up Wan Wuxin and Yang Haoya and said, "Two senior brothers, wake up quickly. We seem to have left the ruins and arrived at an unknown continent while Xiaohua was activating the incense cult's formation. Outside the time light knot of the Eldritch continent, the void in the distance was distorted. Not to mention the stars, even all the light and space were twisted like fried dough twists. It was completely different from the ordinary space. In this folded and distorted space, a black hole suddenly appeared. After this black hole appeared, thousands of light and shadows burst out from the black hole. Indescribable waves filled the entire space within 10,000 miles. Following this wave, a small dot appeared inexplicably. As soon as it appeared, it immediately teleported to the time light knot. At this moment, the small dot's figure was revealed. It was that triangular monster. This monster was still spinning and had not stopped, but its huge eyes had already opened slightly. When the eyes opened, the folded and distorted space before the light and shadow rushed towards the time light knot again. Everything within 10,000 miles was covered in it. Behind this huge eye, there was also an even deeper distorted space like a huge tail. The range of this space distortion was so large and so long that there was an extremely large amount of space distortion. Not to mention space cracks, even space collapses could be found everywhere. This kind of collapse and crack affected countless boundaries and barriers. At this moment, the spatial distortion had already collided with the area enveloped by the time light knot. Although it had yet to truly collide with the light knot, countless specks of light appeared within several 100,000 kilometers. Within the specks of light, all the distorted space immediately stilled, as if it had been smoothed out. Thousands of phantoms appeared within the specks of light. Huff the triangular monster let out a long sigh that sounded like a breath. Fist-sized bubbles appeared once again within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. These bubbles didn't look big, but each of them was an independent space. Each space had its own time. Although the time was extremely similar, there were still minute differences. When the spatial bubble appeared, a slight difference in time also appeared, and the time light spots were immediately disturbed. All the phantoms returned to a distorted space, but this space was instantly destroyed by the triangular monster. Roar! The triangular monster roared, and shot out an unparalleled beam of light from its huge eyes. The beam of light was filled with the power of space and some power of time. When the beam of light fell into the time light knot, the waterfall-like turbulent flow of time actually paused for a moment. Where it paused, the countless phantoms actually condensed together. At this moment, the triangular monster suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it actually turned into a phantom and inserted itself between the phantoms that were about to solidify. However, it was only for a moment. The stagnation of the turbulent flow of time was broken by an even more powerful power of time. The phantoms that had condensed once again dispersed, and the entire time light knot returned to its original state. Just as the time knot was activated, the silhouette of a teleportation channel appeared within the light knot. This silhouette split into countless copies in an instant. In just a short moment, these countless silhouettes condensed into one at the edge of the light knot and rushed into the void. The black and white silhouette followed the direction that the triangular monster had flown from, and an inexplicable space collapsed at its huge tail. The moment the silhouette disappeared, the entire enormous distorted space began to recede from the distance like a flood. As it receded, All the spatial cracks and spatial collapses were strangely smoothed out. The vast sea of snow seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see. In addition to the snow on the ground, there were also snowflakes in the sky. The snowflakes were like goose feathers, falling all over the sky. They landed on the mountain peaks, in the wilderness, and in the streams that could no longer be seen. The gurgling sound of the streams reverberated in the air, and it was particularly pleasant to listen to in the quiet mountains. Occasionally, the ups and downs of the mountain range would appear in the distance, but it was quickly covered by the nearby mountain peaks. The mountain peaks were not tall, but they were very steep. There were almost no flat paths to climb them. The mountain peaks were not completely covered in snow, and the mountain peaks were not peaceful. As the north wind whistled, it had long blown away the only warmth in the mountain peaks, and the snowflakes that filled the sky also frantically avoided it. When the north wind hit the mountain peaks, it was like a large hand grabbing the accumulated snow and throwing it into the air. As a result, the snowflakes in the air became even more chaotic. When the north wind calmed down, the snowflakes fell again with a rustling sound. The sound of the snowflakes, together with the sound of flowing water, was like a piece of music. The music floated high up in the sky. Wherever the north wind blew, there were bare bluish-black rocks. Occasionally, some dark green roots would poke out from the gaps between the rocks. The injured grass trembled slightly, as if it was intoxicated by the music. At this time, the mountain peaks were a little ugly. They were mottled with some bluish-black spots, and some were pure white. But looking at the pure white spots, it was really a place with thick layers of snow and ice. The ice sculptures and snow on it were very beautiful. In this beauty, there were some strange or ordinary plants, or blooming red plums, or budding spirit flowers, or even green mushrooms that stretched out to the sky to welcome the snowflakes. There were many more. Occasionally, a spiritual beast that looked like a mountain rat would crawl out from the cracks in the mountain rocks and extend its head towards the spiritual flower. However, before it could open its mouth and extend its sharp claws, its extremely bright little eyes turned around vigilantly. Before it could even clearly see what was behind it, a wave of dragon's breath surged towards it like a tidal wave. The spiritual rat's body immediately stiffened as fear appeared in its eyes. It stood dazedly on the ice and snow. At this time, at the bottom of the mountain, in the distance, in the endless snow, there was the sound of footsteps on the snow. A monk wearing a kasaya, wearing a pilu hat, and holding a 9-ringed monk's staff in his hand, actually stepped on the snow in this pathless wilderness. With a determined and pious face, wasn't this Chunzong, who was seeking scriptures in the land of bliss? The sound of footsteps crunching was originally ear-piercing, but in this quiet wilderness, combined with the sound of water, wind, and snowflakes, it was extremely harmonious. It reverberated in the wilderness, and a new piece of music was played. However, this harmonious piece of music only lasted for a moment. Swoosh, 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 another sound came from behind the monk, disrupting the celestial scene. Then he saw a muscular draconic horse raising its head, walking and jumping as it followed. It looked very lively. The draconic horse's entire body was pure white. Under its mane, faint golden dragon scales could be faintly seen. As the draconic horse jumped, the tail that was dragging behind it would rise from time to time. When it landed, it would sweep across the ground, stirring up a large amount of snow, causing the snow behind it to fly in all directions. On the forehead of the dragon horse, in the thick mane, a dragon horn was revealed. This dragon horn was a little strange. It was actually in the shape of a crescent moon, and there was a faint halo at the tip of the horn. What was even stranger was not this, but on the back of the dragon horse, where the saddle was supposed to be, there was no saddle. Instead, there were many wooden boxes, and the outer layer of the wooden boxes was wrapped in a thick oilcloth, so no one could see what was inside. The wooden box made a dull sound as the draconic horse jumped. It was as if something heavy had been placed inside. Just as the dragon horse passed by, before the flying snow could fall, another huge fire ape followed. This fire ape had an indifferent look on its face. Although it appeared to be indifferent to everything in the world, it allowed the snow to fall on its head, body, and even its messy fur to be covered in snow. The fire ape carried a magic wand on its shoulder, and its hands were placed on the wand. In its mouth, there was a withered grass root, and it was chewing on it in boredom. Although the fire ape's body emitted a kind of carefree aura, its eyes were fixed on the monk in front of the dragon horse, and it was releasing its yuan sense from time to time to be alert of the surrounding situation. This fire ape was no other demon, it was Yuan Tongtian. After Yuan Tongtian passed by, the snow fell, and another cultivator with thick eyebrows and big eyes, dressed in battle armor, walked over with large strides. This cultivator looked at the snow that had just fallen, and his face was filled with disdain. However, he only snorted, and his breath was like a gust of wind, blowing away the remaining snow. He didn't say anything, and looked at the nearby mountain peak with interest, as if he was admiring it. Chunzong walked in the snow with difficulty. His cloth shoes were already covered in mud and snow, and now they were soaked. Even the lower half of his monk robe was soaked in water, swaying slightly in the wind. Chunzong walked a few steps, then paused for a moment. He stood there and took a few deep breaths, then gritted his teeth, and continued to walk forward. Seeing this, the dragon horse behind him opened its mouth and said in human language, "Monk, do you still think of me as a disciple? I followed you from so far away just to be your mount. How could you turn a blind eye to me? It's fine if you can fly, but you only know how to walk with your feet. I am the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. Do you think it's easy for me to serve you? You want me to put my face as the 10th prince? It's fine if you don't ride me, but you put these tattered scriptures on my back. I clearly told you that I have a dragon shell here. Isn't it better to put these tattered scriptures in the dragon shell than anything else? If you don't have a Qianquan bag, but with our friendship, I can give this dragon shell to you." Chapter 4274. Amitabha Chunzong did not even turn his head as he chanted the name of Buddha, and continued to walk forward. The Confucian cultivator behind Yuan Tongtian retracted his gaze from the distant scenery, and glanced at the dragon horse behind Chunzong. He sneered and said, "One of the requirements of sutra seeking in nirvana is for a monk without any divine powers to walk step by step to Lane Temple, then from Lane Temple to Longevity Town. If the monk rides you, how can he seek in nirvana? I really don't know what the East Sea Dragon Palace is thinking. Since they want you to get a share of sutra seeking in nirvana, why do they want you to transform into a dragon horse? Even if you meet demons, you can't fight them. You can only be a decoration. Could it be that you've made a mistake and you can only be a horse before you make up for it? Damn it." Hearing the Confucian cultivator's words, the dragon horse jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He turned his head and shouted, "Who said I made a mistake? Who said I made a mistake? Do you think I want to accompany you here and walk around like a lunatic? I'm willing to wear the white dragon suit and turn into a horse. What can you do about it? Being a horse for the monk is the dragon palace giving face to the Buddha Lord and the immortal emperor. Besides, the monk is not a monk without any divine powers. He has been walking for more than 200 years. If he didn't have any divine powers, he would have turned into a skeleton." "Shut up," Yuan Tongtian scolded impatiently. "If you two continue to talk nonsense, do you believe that I won't beat the two of you to death? How dare you? How dare you?" The dragon horse became more anxious and shouted, "Why don't you try beating me? Why don't you try beating me? You're just a fire ape with no background. Just because you flattered the monk earlier, you actually became my senior brother. Why don't you take a piss and look at your own face? What qualifications do you have to be my senior brother?" Amitabha Chunzong, who was walking in front, finally could not stand it anymore. He turned his head and scolded, "Zhenfeng, you broke the mouth precept again." Ba the dragon horse, who was called Zhenfeng, spat. A big mouthful of dragon saliva fell into the snow, and smashed a big hole in the ground. Then he continued to scold, "I've violated many commandments. Not only the verbal commandments, but also the commandments of anger, lust, and so on." When Chunzong heard this, his expression changed. He said indifferently, "If that's the case, then Oh, Master Longma." Zhenfeng hurriedly changed the topic and trotted over to Chunzong, saying with a smile, "Disciple was just playing with senior brothers. Don't you feel that it's very lonely in the wilderness and the sea of snow? Wouldn't you be happy if your disciple and senior brother were to entertain you?" Then Dragon Horse Zhenfeng turned around and said to the scholarly cultivator as if asking for help, Isn't that right, senior martial brother Jinhan? Jinhan's face was filled with contempt and disdain, but he still said, "That's right, junior brother's temper is like this. He also wants to do something for master, and doesn't want to lose face in front of master. Master doesn't look at the monk's face but looks at the Buddha's face. You don't look at merit but look at hard work. No matter what, he has accompanied master for more than 100 years. From the eastern sea to the western paradise and then to the Lane Temple, he can be considered to have worked hard. Now that the four of us have obtained the sutra, we're already on our way back. You're kicking him out of the sect for such a small matter. Isn't that too unreasonable?" "Jinhan, do you really think so?" Yuan Tongtian's eyes were filled with ridicule as he couldn't help but ask. Jinkong, seeing the change in the expressions of Longma Jinfeng and Confucian Jinhan, Chunzong hurriedly rubbed his stomach and said, "Master is a bit hungry. There's no village or shop here. I don't know where I can find food. Can you find something for master to eat?" "Yes, master." Chunzong immediately agreed. Then he glanced at Longma Jinfeng and Confucian Jinhan and said indifferently, "You two protect master, I'll be back soon." Go Jinhan waved his hand indifferently. "This nirvana is a pure land of Buddhism. How could there be any demon race or Taoist cultivators?" "That's right, go quickly. If you starve master, can you bear the responsibility?" Longma Jinfeng echoed. Yuan Tongtian, whose Buddhist name is Jinkong, slightly raised the corner of his mouth. A demon cloud appeared under his feet, and he flew away. After Yuan Tongtian left, Chunzong opened his mouth and said, "Umatba Jinfeng, what you're carrying isn't some junk. It's my Buddha's Mahayana Buddhist scripture. This Buddhist scripture is the hope of hundreds of millions of bodhisattvas in hidden immortal continent. It's also the goal of the four of us. I know you want to show your filial piety to me and don't want me to be burdened like this. However, this Mahayana Buddhist scripture is 100 times more important than me. You can obtain more merit by carrying this Buddhist scripture than carrying me. You don't need to compete with Zhenhan and Zhenkong in subduing demons. You only need to protect this Mahayana Buddhist scripture. It's stronger than anything else." "That's right. Master, you're right." Zhenhan also said with a faint smile. "Jinfeng, my Qiankuan pouch contains the scriptures of the 100 schools of Confucianism. If you're willing, you can also put it on your back. This merit will definitely be greater." Let Jinfeng was originally furious. However, when he saw the sincerity on Chun Zhang's face, he hurriedly changed his tone and said with a smile, "Senior brother, don't joke with little brother. If little brother takes away your merit, won't your military school fall out with my dragon palace? Wouldn't senior brother's trip to Lane Temple be in vain? Wouldn't you have seen Mahavairakana's face in vain?" Seeing that Jinfeng was no longer angry, Jinhan also felt bored and didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head and looked at the surrounding snowy scenery. Her gaze was attracted by a snowy peak in the distant valley. After Chunzong finished explaining, he didn't care if Jinfeng listened or not. He looked at the place where Yuan Tongtian disappeared with some concern. Then he took his staff and walked forward. After walking for a few li, he saw a gurgling stream under the snow at the foot of the mountain. Chunzong licked his dry lips and said, "Jinkong," however, just as he opened his mouth, he smiled bitterly. Standing there, he turned his head and called out to the draconic horse, "Jinfeng, come here." "Yes, master." The draconic horse Jinfeng quickly walked in front of Chunzong and asked, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Chunzong smiled and walked to the side of the draconic horse. He reached into the oilcloth and took out a purple gold alms bowl. Then he walked to the side of the stream and bent down to get some water. He placed it by his mouth and drank a few mouthfuls. "Io, master." The draconic horse Jinfeng made a fuss and said, "No matter what, you should wait for senior brother Jinkong to come back. If you drink cold water like this, it won't be good for you to have diarrhea. Even if you don't have diarrhea, if you feel uncomfortable anywhere, senior brother Jinkong will beat us to death." After drinking a few mouthfuls, Chunzong clearly couldn't endure the bone-piercing cold. His face was a little pale, and he hurriedly poured the snow water in the purple gold alms bowl. Just as he was about to turn around, he saw the little spirit mouse standing on the mountain peak. At this moment, there was already some snow on the spirit mouse's body. Its body was trembling, and its eyes were filled with fear as it stared at the draconic horse. Sai Chunzong sighed and put down the purple gold alms bowl. With a slightly reproachful voice he said, "Zhenfeng, you're being naughty again." After saying that, Chunzong carefully crossed the stream and climbed up the mountain peak with difficulty. It was very strenuous for him to carry the spirit mouse out of the ice and snow. However, just as his hand was about to touch the spirit mouse, his foot slipped and his body slipped down. Chunzong naturally lowered his head. The moment he lowered his head, the spirit mouse that was originally terrified suddenly grew in size. A demon ray shadow that was dozens of feet in size rushed out from its small body. Things happened too suddenly. Draconic horse Zhenfeng and Confucian cultivator Zhenhan didn't expect that there was a demon race hidden within the spirit beast. Their faces turned pale with fright. Just as they were about to make a move, an extremely familiar voice sounded in the air. "Master, be careful." Immediately, a wave of staff shadows appeared out of thin air and fell on the demon race's shadow. The shadow didn't have time to resist before all the shadows were smashed into the spirit mouse's body. Finally, a pitch-black magic staff appeared in the wave of staff shadows and hit the spirit mouse's head. Pooh, with a light sound, the little spirit mouse was smashed into a pile of meat paste by the magic staff. "Damn it." Draconic horse Zhenfeng let out a long breath and cursed. Another demon beast that was fooled by rumors. If this monk could become immortal after eating it, how could it be your turn? This daddy will be the first to eat it. Do you still need to say it? Confucian cultivator Zhenhan coldly snorted. Of course it's your demon race's great sage. They don't want to see the sutra-seeking extreme bliss be completed smoothly. If they don't cause some trouble, how can they be at ease? What does the demon race's great sage have to do with my dragon palace of the four seas? This daddy thinks, it's your Confucian family. Draconic horse Zhenfeng retorted. They don't want the sutra-seeking extreme bliss to be completed. Zhenkong Chunzong didn't care about the two's battle of words. His face was a bit green as he looked at the sky with an unkind tone and asked, "What are you doing? Why are you starting a massacre again?" At this moment, Yuan Tongtian had already descended from the sky with a tall peach tree on his back. The large peaches on the branches looked very tempting. Hearing Chun Zhang's question, Yuan Tongtian didn't care and casually replied, "That's a demon race's phantom beast. He's hiding in the spirit mouse's body and wants to eat you." "How is that possible?" Chunzong looked at the mangled corpse of the spirit mouse and was so angry that his lips trembled. Master was clearly looking at the spirit mouse. "When did the phantom beast appear?" "Monk." Yuan Tongtian sized up Chunzong and said, "That phantom beast appeared when you lowered your head. You don't have spirit sense and don't know the eye-clearing technique, so naturally you can't see it. If you don't believe me, you can ask your two disciples." Chapter 4275. Ahem ahem. Senior brother Zhenhan, your battle armor looks really mighty. I wonder which blacksmith master of the immortal palace forged it? Draconic horse Zhenfeng coughed and looked at the armor he had been looking at for close to 200 years. He seemed to have discovered something strange and hurriedly asked Zhenhan. Zhenhan said in all seriousness, "Is there a need to ask?" "Naturally, it was forged by the #1 blacksmith master in the world." "Oh, why don't you guess who the #1 blacksmith master in the world is?" "Ayaya, this is not easy to guess." Draconic horse Zhenfeng's face was as if he was thinking hard. Seeing Zhenfeng and Zhenhan talking about him, Zhenkong smiled coldly and didn't say anything else. However, Chunzong didn't intend to let him go and said, "Zhenkong, even if there was a phantom beast, it was enough that you subdued it. There was no need to kill it, right? Moreover, this spirit rat wasn't a phantom beast. What was the point of killing it?" Monk Zhenkong was somewhat impatient and said with a frown, "My strength is limited. It's not possible for me to subdue the phantom beast without injuring you. It's already not bad that I was able to kill it before it could kill you. Zhenkong, how many times have I told you in the past 200 years? Buddhist disciples should be compassionate and respect life. When we need help, we should always be kind. When we sweep the floor, we're afraid of harming the lives of ants. We should cover the lamp with gauze to protect the moths. Why did you kill it step by step? Although this spirit rat wasn't a human, It was still a life. What was the point of killing this innocent spirit rat and obtaining the General Sutra? Monk Zhenkong seemed to be used to this, and he didn't get angry. He only said, "The phantom beast has already borrowed the spirit rat's flesh, so killing the phantom beast is equivalent to killing the spirit rat. Moreover, even if I don't touch the spirit rat after killing the phantom beast, it won't live past today." That's right. Since you knew that the spirit rat would die if the phantom beast died, why didn't you think of a way to subdue the phantom beast? Chunzong asked in a somewhat forceful manner. It's good to have this phantom beast submit to our Buddhist sect. Monk, I've already beaten and killed those that should be killed. Tell me what to do. Zhenkong was so angry that he laughed and retorted. You have no idea how many living beings you have killed along the way. Chuanzong sighed. You always say that there will be no next time, but when have you ever taken those words to heart? I just want to ask you, will you do it again next time? Monk Zhenkong tossed the peach tree to the ground and calmly replied, Don't ask me about this. Ask the demons and humans who want to take your life. As long as they don't want your life, I definitely won't do anything. But if they want to hurt you, I won't show any mercy. Hearing Zhenkong's words, compassion appeared in Chunzang's eyes. All the living beings who had died under Zhenkong's magic wand in the past 200 years appeared in his mind. He could not help but say, Since that's the case, you go Io. Master, seeing that Chunzong was about to chase Zhenkong away, Zhenhan hurriedly took a few steps forward and plucked a peach from the peach tree. She handed it to Chunzong and smiled. Look, the peach senior brother found is even more juicy than the immortal peaches in the immortal palace. Why don't you try it? Chunzong looked at the juicy peach. In the end, he could not harden his heart and sighed. Forget it. This is the last time. If there is a next time, I don't need to say anything whatever. Xiankong did not care at all. He waved his hand as if he was chasing away a fly. Do whatever you want. If it wasn't for Master, Zhenkong immediately stopped and looked at Zhenfeng and Zhenhan. The two of them perked up their ears and waited for him to continue. Thus, Zhenkong shut his mouth for a moment and continued. Otherwise, who would have the patience to protect you for 200 years? Zhenfeng and Zhenhan could not help but feel slightly disappointed when they saw Zhenkong being so tight-lipped. They glanced at each other and sneered. They had the same question. Just where did Zhenkong come from? Just which great saint was behind him? However, it had been more than 200 years and they did not see any clues. In Chunzang's eyes, the so-called sutra-seeking extreme bliss was a process of seeking the gospel for the millions of Buddhist people in the hidden immortal continent. However, in Zhenfeng and Zhenhan's eyes, it might not be so. Perhaps it was just a game to obtain merits and benefits. Therefore, it was very important to have a place in the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. In fact, long before Chunzong took down the Buddhist decree in the Tidal River Temple, the Immortal Palace and Lane Temple had already discussed this matter. However, this matter did not only involve Buddhism and Confucianism, it also involved the Immortal Palace and various Confucian families, and even the demon race. Even when Chunzong began his sutra-seeking extreme bliss journey in the Longevity Town, he did not arrange everything properly. In particular, right after Chunzong left, Xiaohua had a dispute with Sun Ping, who was waiting for him at the Liao River. Although the two left the Longevity Town very quickly, the imprint of the Immortal Palace was unavoidable. Therefore, the matter that was already settled changed again. It was not until more than a year after Chunzong left the Longevity Town that a group of forces suddenly discovered that Chunzong had actually accepted a demon race disciple. This disciple seemed to have been accepted overnight, and it also seemed to have been arranged long ago. However, the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators did not receive any message from the demon race. Seeing that the demon race had already made the first move, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect did not dare to delay any longer. On one hand, they arranged for an envoy to go to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, to denounce the great saint of the demon race for not acting according to the agreement. On the other hand, they hurriedly arranged for Chunzang's disciple. Chunzong originally had 3 disciples. One was a demon race disciple, one was a Buddhist, and one was a Confucian cultivator. The Confucian cultivator disciple should be the eldest senior brother. On the hidden immortal continent, He was the first to accept Chunzong as a nominal protector. After that, he went to the Nirvana world and accepted the second Buddhist as a real Buddhist disciple. As for the demon race disciple, he was arranged in the Nirvana world. After being subdued by the Confucian cultivator disciple and the Buddhist sect disciple, he surrendered to the Buddhist sect. Yuan Tongtian's appearance was good. He took the eldest senior brother's position. This Confucian cultivator could only be the second senior brother. The second senior brother was Zhenhan. He was originally the son of the military family and was called Sun Zihan. The status of this Confucian cultivator disciple originally did not belong to the Sun family. Instead, the Immortal Palace gave it to the Dongfang, Ximen, Nangong, and Baiming for big families. However, the status of the eldest senior brother was already gone. The enthusiasm of the four big families to compete for the status also disappeared instantly. The four big families also did not have any disciples who were willing to be a Fire Ape's junior brother. Therefore, the status was given to the Sun family again. Under the instruction of the Immortal Palace, the Sun family chose Sun Zihan. At first, Sun Zihan was convinced by Yuan Tongtian. However, in the end, it was because of Yuan Tongtian that he had the opportunity to enter the Nirvana world to seek scriptures. He was still grateful to Yuan Tongtian from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, on the hidden immortal continent, he was courteous to Yuan Tongtian. However, the essence of this kind of courtesy was a kind of pride as a human cultivator. However, in the following few years, Yuan Tongtian's protection of Chuanzong came from the bottom of his heart. He even risked his own life to save Chuanzong. It was very different from what he thought. Zhenhan could not help but feel a little surprised. Moreover, Yuan Tongtian did not care about some of his little tricks at all. Even if he was captured by some Taoist cultivators and wanted to kill him in front of Yuan Tongtian turned a deaf ear to it. Therefore, Zhenhan was completely relieved of Yuan Tongtian. Moreover, this demon clan's Yuan Tongtian was indeed very resourceful. He was much more powerful than Zhenhan. On the hidden immortal continent, almost all the work was done by Yuan Tongtian. He did not need Zhenhan at all. After watching for a while, Zhenhan got used to it. He also adjusted his attitude. Being the second senior brother was fine. Anyway, he was also here to gain merit. However, at this time, strange news came from the Thousand Demons' sacred territory. The demon clan's great sage did not take action at all. The disciples arranged by the demon clan were still waiting to be subdued by the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect disciples. Chaos, chaos. This was Zhenhan's mood when he heard the news from the Immortal Palace that day. He was almost impulsive that day. He wanted to ask Yuan Tongtian where he came from. Could it be that he jumped out of a stone? However, as a Confucian disciple, he still had the self-restraint and patience. He did not open his mouth and only watched coldly. The Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect were shocked when they received the news. They never thought that there would be a fourth force besides the demon race, the Confucian cultivators, and the Buddhist sect that would disrupt their plans. The first thing they thought of was the Dao sect cultivator who called himself the primordial chaos ancestor. However, they did not understand how the Grand Mist ancestor could know about the arrangement of the sutra-seeking nirvana. How could he send such a powerful fire ape in advance? What made them even more dumbfounded was that whether it was the Immortal Palace or the Great Thunderclap Temple, they could not find the origin of the fire ape. Even if they used great magical powers, they could not find Yuan Tongtian's origin. They could not find any cause and effect. This fire ape was really as Sun Zihan thought. It was like a stone that fell from the sky. Naturally, the Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect had the intention to kill Yuan Tongtian. However, they also saw clearly that the one who really protected Chunzong was Yuan Tongtian. Zhenhan also said clearly that Yuan Tongtian was not interested in the merit of the sutra-seeking nirvana. He only cared about Chunzang's safety. Moreover, the one who accepted Yuan Tongtian was Chunzong himself. In other words, this was Chunzang's own choice. It had nothing to do with the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, or the demon clan. Since it was Chunzang's choice, the Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators had to consider more for Chunzong. After all, the heavenly Tao was flawed. Out of 50, one would escape. Perhaps Chunzong was that one who escaped. In the end, The one who settled this matter was naturally the Mahavairakana revered Buddha. The Buddha Lord formed a Buddha seal with his hands. The Buddha light penetrated the heaven and earth. After a few days, the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's eyes flashed with a strange expression. He said, "Since he wants to come, let him come." Then the Mahavairakana revered Buddha did not say anything more. He did not give any explanation at all. Since the Buddha Lord of the Buddhist sect did not object, the immortal palace naturally had no reason to object. Yuan Tongtian, the disciple with the Buddha named Zhenkong, sat in the position of the eldest senior brother. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.